as you stream in to this 3-day meeting. We are delighted to have you today as we kick off day 1 of the ReSAKSS annual conference, a long-standing tradition of Academia 2063 through our ReSAKSS program. As you settle in, please head to the chat and tell us your name and where you're joining from, as well as your affiliation. I am Dr. Layi Butake, Director of Communication and Outreach for Academia 2063. I'm joining you from our regional office in Dakar, Senegal. Delighted to be your host for the occasion. So we are gathered here today to kick off the launch of the ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report. This is our 17th edition of the ATOR. And this year's theme, Moving the Technology Frontiers in African Agri-Food Systems, sets the stage for an engaging online event to launch this report. And we have assembled a diverse group of stakeholders who will be weighing in on the findings of this report and the opportunities for the transformation of Africa's agri-food systems through leveraging emerging and already existing technologies. As always, we are providing simultaneous interpretation for this meeting in English and French. Please head to the bottom of your screen and click the interpretation button and choose the language track of your choice. As you will learn from the discussions, this edition of the report is dedicated to promoting technologies, leveraging technologies for the acceleration of agri-food system transformation in Africa. And we can't wait to hear from you on your thoughts about the discussions. We have a Q&A chat box at the bottom of the screen, which will be dedicated to collecting your questions, your contributions, and observations as we make our way through the discussions over the next 3 days. Without further ado, let's welcome our first speaker for today, Executive Chairperson of Academia 2063, Dr. Ousmane Badiane.
Thank you, Layi. It's an honor and a pleasure to join you here today on the 17th edition of the Annual Trends and Outlook Report. So, sorry, I hope you're not hearing. I don't have a baby in the house. I don't know where that's coming from.
We can hear you fine.
Okay.
I can hear you.
Good. So, yeah, thank you again. This is the 17th edition of the Annual Trends and Outlook Report. We appreciate everybody's presence here. And I would like to first and foremost thank His Excellency Moses Velakati, a commissioner of the African Union Commission in charge of agriculture, environment, and the blue economy. So this report has been initiated as part of the CADEP process nearly 20 years ago. And its objective is to help us bring more evidence, more analytics, more real on-the-ground understanding of what's happening in our countries. Africa is the only continent where people still go by conventional wisdom, seldom take time to look at the data, have an opinion of what Africa is about and not. But because of the importance of CADEP, which your department is leading, and the critical nature of sound information to guide the best decisions that African member states need to advance the frontier as they have done in the last 20 years, we need to keep on pushing our understanding of issues that can highlight what countries can and cannot do, but also what opportunities are there that need to be exploited. So every year we choose a specific topic, and this year we have a topic that is close to your heart about technologies, whether to advance seed technologies, soil fertility management technologies, dairy processing, AI, and the like. Technologies are extremely important to advance the agenda. And we work on this for very many years with colleagues, both on the research side or on the financial community side. That's why I'm happy to see here with us Tim Robertson, who is here today in his capacity as the chair of the CADEP Development Partner Coordination Group. I'm also happy to welcome Watipaso Makandawire from FCDO, a longtime supporter and a partner of the work that we do. I would like to thank all the authors who contributed to this year's editor and the editors and co-editors who have produced an excellent report here, but also thanking our communications team and others for an amazing program, a good roster of speakers and panelists and discussants, which I think is an illustration of the role that the editor, this report plays in its place in the knowledge community, the evidence ecosystem across the continent. The topic this year, Your Excellency and friends, is about technology. I remember one of my earliest mentors next to my thesis supervisor, who Schengen and I know very well, who was Director General at IFPRI, Mr. John Mellor, for very many years, used to say that the most effective way to reduce poverty and improve livelihoods is to change the productivity or to raise the productivity of the resources that poor people depend on. And there's no faster way, more robust way, more effective way to raise productivity than through technology. That's the only way you can get more out of this, the same unit of factors, whether it's land, whether it's manpower, whether it's a shilling that you invest. Technology helps you get more out of every unit that you put in there. That is the importance of this report. The other importance is really a major message here for African countries. We can get to the frontier when it comes to the technology. We don't have to be second to anybody, but we have to make the investment in the expertise and the laboratory to master emerging technology, whether you're talking about gene editing, CRISPR and other things, AI, biotechnology in general, whether you're talking about mechanical in terms of mechanization, whether you're talking about smart irrigation systems, there is a lot that Africa can do now and can innovate and be at the frontier. We at Academia 2063 are doing what we can in the field where we are active. We're helping Africa be among the leaders in the AI and geospatial technology, in addition to also in the old fields of economic modeling and others to also stay at the frontier. So this report is more than timely as we get started to launch the third decade of the Comprehensive Africa Agriculture Development Program. And we look forward to seeing this report being a reference document and helping our officials from the African Union all the way to the member states going via the ReSAKSS to have access to what we think we need to deal with technology. There's so many chapters here in so many different areas where the authors have ably demonstrated not just the potential of technology, but the opportunities that are there to leverage technology to move the needle. So thank you to all of you for joining us again. And I'm turning over to you, Lai. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Badian, for setting the stage with those opening remarks. I will now welcome our next speaker, Mr. Watipaso Kandawire, Regional Food Market Advisor at the Foreign Commonwealth and Development Office, FCDO, for his opening remarks.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Usman, for the warm welcome, and glad to be here. Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, colleagues, and all partners and stakeholders, it is a great honor to join you today for the launch of the 17th edition of the Annual Trends and Outlook Report. Allow me to congratulate Academia 2063, the whole team, the African Union's Commission, for hosting this important event today. This gathering of researchers, policymakers, private sector leaders, development partners, and innovators from across Africa and beyond reflects our own shared commitment to transforming agri-food systems in ways that could be described as ambitious, evidence-driven, and future-focused. The challenge before us is quite immense because according to the 2025 State of Food Security and Nutrition in the World Report, more than 20% of Africa's population, which is about 307 million people, experienced hunger in the year 2024. This reality underscores the urgency of accelerating innovation and expanding access to technologies that can drive real measurable change. In moments like these, I'm reminded of the words of Nelson Mandela, who said, "It always seems impossible until it's done." This spirit captures in my mind the determination that is shaping Africa's agriculture transformation today. Across the continent, technology is already making a difference. We are seeing inspiring examples of technology innovation delivering results. For example, in Nigeria, the Hello Tractor platform, often that has been called the Uber for tractors, is seen to be transforming smallholder farming by allowing farmers to hire affordable mechanism services through mobile phones and helping them plant on time, boost yields, and increase income. This model illustrates the enormous potential of digital innovation to democratize access to technology and strengthen livelihoods at scale. Success stories like this and many more show what becomes possible when technology meets creativity, entrepreneurship, and inclusive design. This conference for us comes at a pivotal time for UK-Africa relations. As some of you may recall, in June 2025, following an extensive 5-month consultation across Africa, the UK set out the foundations of a new approach to Africa, one which is built on listening, respect, equality, and co-creation. The approach seeks to strengthen cooperation in areas where our interests align, and over the years, we have learned that a strong and effective partnership requires recognition of the context where you're operating, trying to build coherence, and ensuring that you have committed leadership. We have also learned through the many interventions that understanding and responding to market demand is key. And we believe that this also applies to technologies. The UK approach aligns with ATO's focus on facilitating access to frontier technologies and scaling the innovations that can help Africa build resilient, productive, and sustainable food systems. Through the FCDO, the UK remains committed to supporting stronger agricultural research and innovation ecosystems, climate-smart technologies and data-driven solutions, inclusive markets that benefit young people, women, and smallholder farmers, and partnerships that can unlock investment and accelerate sustainable growth. I'll give a few examples. The UK, through FCDO, is already currently working with African institutions, including Academia 2063, AGRA, AUC, AUDA NEPAD, the various regional economic communities, AFCTA Secretariat, on a number of Africa's continental priorities, including, I'll mention a few, the domestication and implementation of the CAADP strategy and action plan, designing and building an AFCTA agri-trade action plan,
of poverty reduction. And then on the
there is a background. Okay, thank you. I'll read that again. The UK is currently working with African institutions, including Academia 2063, and the other institutions that I mentioned, like AGRA AUC out at NEPAD, the regional integration communities, and AFCT Secretariat on some of the Africa's continental priorities. This includes domestication and implementation of the CAADP strategy and action plan, the AFCT's Agri-Trade Action Plan, and more importantly, at the moment, bringing to life a corridors-based approach to agri-trade that aims to boost intra-Africa trade and integration with global supply chains. Our role is to work with African partners, co-creating solutions, supporting local priorities, and ensuring innovation reaches those who need it most. As we work to collaborate more with our African partners, I would likewise encourage collaboration and cooperation amongst the African institutions on the ground for driving progress. In conclusion, as we launch this edition of ATA, the 17th one, we do so at a moment of both challenge and opportunity. The evidence presented in this report will provide invaluable guidance for policymakers and practitioners working to harness technology for agri-food transformation. So therefore, let's go forward with clarity and purpose to advance technologies that improve livelihoods, empowering farmers and our communities, strengthening climate resilience, and of course, to build a food secure and prosperous Africa, where Africa can feed itself, but can also contribute to feeding the world. On behalf of UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office, I congratulate Academia 2063 and the African Union Commission on this significant milestone. We look forward to deepening our partnership going forward and to the insights of this year's ETO will deliver. I thank you and wish you a very productive and inspiring conference. Thank you once again.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kandawire, and our regards to our partners at FCDO. I will now welcome our next speaker, Mr. Tim Robertson, Senior Agricultural Specialist at the World Bank and Chair of the CAADP Development Partners Coordination Group, for his opening remarks.
Many thanks, Your Excellency. Esteemed guests, apologies, my camera is not working this morning, but it's very early in the morning, so it's probably a blessing for everybody there. I have three comments to make. I think, first of all, just a general comment that this is an excellent gathering. I think the topic is very appropriate. But let me start my first comment by saying that we are at a time of enormous change. We have a generational shift in the international finance supporting African agriculture. There's a major movement in terms of what donors are financing, how they finance, etc. Secondly, the continent is facing mounting challenges, both political and cultural and technical. The need to generate jobs, the need to expand inter-regional and external trade, the need to engage young people and respond to the challenges of young people, and the ongoing political governance challenges of conflict, etc. And then we're also, I think, as Usman pointed out, going through this radical shift in technology, the emergence of AI, the emergence of digital solutions, the fact that many countries are digitally registering farmers with the potential to make the challenge of soil health much more precise. Brilliant opportunities, really, but at a time of great change. But at the time when things are changing, some things are also staying the same. Technology, this meeting and the focus on technology is great, but at the end of the day, in order to scale up and deliver, we need to be able to build a narrative that convinces the ministries of finance we need to build a narrative that public investment in agriculture can be sustained. And the way to do that is to ensure that we are linking our technical discussions with really clear discussions about budgeting and finance and a commitment to improving the efficiency and effectiveness of the public money that we get, because that's the way to lever in additional private sector money. Was one way of leveraging private sector funds. The other thing that seems to be we're all agreed needs to change but has not yet changed is that, you know, every single conference I've been to over since and before Kampala, but especially since Kampala, everybody has agreed that with the change in financing, but more importantly with the changing environment, that we need to commit ourselves to new ways of working, better partnership, better business models. But the process of actually delivering new ways of working and new business models, that is proving to be much more challenging than the rhetoric. And my hope is that in these discussions over the period of this conference, that how do you take this excellent report and then put it into the hands of the people that will make decisions? How do you help countries where, yes, there's an emerging knowledge of, I work very, very closely with Tanzania, and there's a huge enthusiasm for new technologies in Tanzania. But the challenge is, how do you bring on board all of the staff required to ensure that those technologies are being maximized? How do you bring on the Ministry of Finance to ensure that you've got the right levels of financing? How do you bring on the research institutions to work more closely with extension services? How do you make the extension services deliver more efficiently to farmers, etc.? So those things are there. We talk about them a lot, but they don't really seem to change a great deal. And I think it's my reflection on CAADP. I've been working on CAADP for the better part of a decade and a half, and I think it's at a real inflection point. As the chair of the donor group, we see a real shift in and a real questioning of how do we make CAADP work. There's a strong support for CAADP. It's really the Kampala summit that we were all at this time last year, and the goals that it set out really show a deep resilience of CAADP. But we really need to take the opportunity of showing how investment, public, private investment, contributes to the jobs, growth and resilience agenda. I think intuitively we're the choir, and speaking to us is the easy part. The more difficult part is really looking at where the rubber hits the road in terms of budgets, policies and finance. And I think this is the time. We are competing with a whole range of other priorities, energy, health, education, and we need to make our case for the delivery of CAADP very, very strongly and very, very strategically, I think. I so totally agree with Usman. This is an opportunity to really demonstrate the capacity of African innovation and African solutions. But in doing that, business as usual will not stand. I think the change in financing has shown that we really need to think about different business models. And I'm a major advocate, and I think a lot of people are these days, for results-based business models that demonstrate how continental and regional organizations are helping deliver change at national level. Transferring this report into toolkits that gives menus for countries to identify where their solutions are that are appropriate to them. Those approaches are critically important. I think I would also strongly endorse Usman's point that we really need to build capacity nationally, regionally, and at continental level, the capacity to really take evidence-based approaches to debate and analysis, I work very closely with colleagues in IGAD and CARDESA on issues such as soil health and FARA. And my conclusion is that we need business models that allow these organizations to be agile. So if they are not building that knowledge capacity themselves because of funding constraints or issues within the organization, then looking for ways that they work more closely with the think tanks and agencies such as academia to build that capacity. And this is the way that we're going to be able to attract new financing. This is the way we're going to be able to convince ministries of finance. This is the way we're going to be able to engage in the political agenda really very effectively. And my final point is that I think coming out of the Kampala summit, we saw 6 thematic areas that really inspired us, inspired every single member of the donor working group, and certainly myself at the World Bank. And I think we need to find and develop really clear pathways that enable us to show how we are taking those 6 thematic areas and delivering real change at national level. That is where, at national level, that is clearly where impact is required. There's a thirst, at least in the countries I work in, for new knowledge and new models. And we really need to set ourselves very clear targets for how we engage with them and monitor them very carefully. And I think we also need to find new ways of engaging with private sector, with new sources of finance, so that we can really take on the challenges that we are facing at the moment. And I really, just to sum up, I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak at the conference. I wish everybody the best of luck, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the outcomes. Many thanks.
Thank you so much, Mr. Robertson, for those remarks. I will now move on to our final speaker for this opening session, His Excellency Moses Vilakati, Commissioner for Agriculture, Rural Development, Blue Economy and Sustainable Environment at the African Union Commission. Over to you, Your Excellency.
Thank you very much, my sister. I was trying to see if I'm visible enough. And greetings and Happy New Year to you all, Your Excellencies, distinguished guests, senior representatives of governments, regional economic communities, development partners, ladies and gentlemen. Once again, a Happy New Year. On behalf of the African Union Commission, it is my pleasure to join you at the opening of the ReSAKSS Annual Conference and the launch of the 17th edition of the Annual Trends and Outlook Report. And thanks very much for inviting me to this important meeting. This year's theme, Moving Technology Frontiers in African Agri-Food Systems, speaks directly to the core priorities of the African Union Commission, particularly the CADIP Kampala Declaration Strategy and Action Plan of 2026 to 2035. The theme also reflects our firm conviction that science, technology, innovation, and evidence-based policymaking are no longer optional, but essential pillars for transforming Africa's agri-food systems. Just to digress a bit, next year, Ethiopia will be hosting COP32. And the thrust of the key thrust of the COP will be in 2 key areas, other than the usual ones. One is AI. 2, it's carbon credits. So this theme, therefore, for this year is talking to what is also will also be discussed during COP32, which we've already started preparing for. The African Union Commission, ladies and gentlemen, is placing strong emphasis on innovation-driven agricultural transformation, from improved seeds, from irrigation and breeding technologies, to advanced biotechnology, precision agriculture, and climate-smart practices. All of these tools are critical for boosting productivity, resilience, and sustainability in the face of climate change and growing food demands. Equally important is our priority on the digital transformation of agriculture and rural development. Digital advisory services, spatial intelligence, satellite-based monitoring, artificial intelligence, and data analytics are reshaping how we plan, how we monitor, and govern agri-food systems. These technologies enable timely decision-making, enhance transparency, and strengthen accountability across all levels. However, technology alone will not deliver the impacts. The African Union Commission therefore prioritizes strong institutions, sound governance, and effective coordination mechanisms. Supportive policies, regulatory frameworks, and incentives are also essential to ensure that innovations are accessible, they are scalable, and responsive to Africa's diverse contexts, particularly for smallholder farmers, the women, youth, and vulnerable people. We also remain deeply committed to evidence-based policy planning and mutual accountability. For over 2 decades, ReSAKSS has been a trusted partner in providing the data, analysis, and knowledge products that underpin CAADP benchmarking, that review processes, and informed dialogue. The annual Trends and Outlook report continues to be a cornerstone in tracking progress and guiding policy and investment decisions across the continent. Ladies and gentlemen, Africa stands at a pivotal moment. Rapid urbanization, changing consumption patterns, a growing population, and the energy and creativity of our youth present unprecedented priorities and opportunities to drive innovation, entrepreneurship, and inclusive growth in the agri-food systems. Under the new phase of the CAADP, which is the CAADP Kampala Declaration and implementation, the African Union Commission is fully committed to delivering on the 6 CAADP commitments, which Tim was pinpointed, translating political momentum into concrete action. I think it is very critical to emphasize the issue of concrete action. As implementation begins, we must ensure that our collective efforts are guided by data, by evidence, and shared learning. I commend Academia 2063 and all partners for the successful launch of the 17th Annual Trends and Outlook report. And I encourage this conference to serve as a platform for dialogue, knowledge exchange, and collaboration in advancing a technologically enabled agri-food transformation for Africa. If we work together, we will be able to domesticate CAADP. And therefore, the issue of technology will become relevant and important for this important assignment. I therefore wish you a productive and successful conference, which will manifest itself in ensuring that Africa becomes full food secured as we move forward. Let me take this opportunity to thank you all for your attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency, for those remarks, which have officially opened the ReSAKSS annual conference. Thank you to all the speakers from this opening session. As we move on to the next phase, the framing remarks. We've heard a lot about technology from our opening speakers and of the role that it can play when mobilized, when leveraged through coordinated action. So let's talk to a tech leader. It's my pleasure to welcome to the floor Ms. Martha Haley, Food Systems and Agricultural Technology Leader, co-founder of ABSE and Halo Tractor, to offer framing remarks on the topic. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you so much. And good afternoon, good morning, good evening to everybody on the call. I want to first start by thanking Academia 2063 and all partners for convening this important conference. I would also like to acknowledge all of the distinguished guests joining us today. Over the next few days, we will engage in discussions on a wide range of topics central to this transformation, including digital and AI-enabled tools, mechanization, irrigation and water management, value addition and processing, investment and financing, governance, and regional cooperation. These conversations are essential, but I would like to frame them around one core idea that the 2025 Annual Trends and Outlook report makes very clear. As stated in the report introduction, Africa's productivity, quote, Africa's productivity challenge is not primarily technical, but deeply institutional and socio-political. Scientific and technological innovations must be embedded within supportive institutions, effective governance, and coherent policies to ensure their widespread adoption and equitable impacts, end quote. Technology can deliver transformative impact only when combined with capable institutions, cooperative and strategic partnerships, and inclusive innovation systems. The technology frontier is not a single breakthrough, but the integration of multiple actors and factors within a supportive ecosystem, working together to address complex, interconnected challenges across the food system. In other words, no technology exists on its own, and no technology survives, let alone scales, without an entire system supporting it. This framing is very important because it helps us interpret the discussions we will be having during this conference. When we talk about mechanization, we are not only talking about equipment, but we're also talking about financing models, skills, maintenance ecosystems, supply chains, and enabling policies. When we talk about digital technologies and AI, we are not talking only about tools or platforms, but about data governance, extension systems, infrastructure, trust, and regulations. Across Africa, technologies already exist throughout the agri-food system, from production to processing, logistics, markets, data, and finance. Demand for these solutions also exists across the system. When supporting systems are absent or misaligned, even the most promising technologies remain trapped at pilot stage, not because they don't work, but because the surrounding system is not yet able to support them. There is also one additional layer of the system that we often underplay, and that is storytelling, marketing, and culture. These are not simply communication tools that sit downstream of technology. They are core enablers of adoption. Around the world, we see that technology adoption accelerates when people understand it, trust it, and see themselves reflected in it. People adopt new technologies when they see others like them using it, when it fits their daily lives, and when it clearly helps them move forward. That is how early adopters turn into mass adoption, not through information alone, but through visibility, trust, and relevance. I want to offer a brief example that I'm sure many of you have been talking about over the last few days. Recently, millions of people around the world tuned into a live stream from Africa by iShowSpeed. What captured attention was not a single product or innovation, but African food, markets, movements, and everyday life, experienced in real time by a mass global audience. The lesson here is not about celebrity, but it's about the way in which people pay attention when something feels real and relevant. That same principle applies to agri-food technologies. Adoption does not happen through technical merit alone. It happens when technologies are embedded in narratives, markets, and cultural contexts that people recognize, value, can trust, and can access. This is something close to my own interests and work, because without this layer, even the best designed solutions struggle to reach scale. As we look toward CADA 2026 to 2035, the opportunity before us is therefore twofold. First, to build cohesive systems where technologies, institutions, policies, markets, and investments reinforce one another. And second, to elevate storytelling, marketing, and cultural relevance as integral components of how those systems function. This is where ReSAKSS plays a critical role. By providing high-quality data analysis and learning platforms, ReSAKSS helps ensure that ambition is grounded in evidence and that implementation can adapt as conditions change. The next decade will not be defined by which technologies Africa adopts alone, but how effectively institutions, policies, investments, and narratives enable those technologies to work together. If we can build that level of cohesion across actors, across sectors, and society, the continent can accelerate progress towards resilient, inclusive, and competitive agri-food systems. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Haley, for setting the stage to help us interpret the conversations we'll be having over the next 2 days. And now it's my honor to welcome our second speaker for the framing remarks, Ambassador Muhammadu Ka, Permanent Representative of the Gambia to the United Nations Office in Geneva and a member of the Malabo Montpellier panel. Over to you, sir. No, we cannot hear you, but we can see you.
Hello, can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now. Perfect.
Very good, good afternoon, Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed an honor to join you at this very important convening jointly organized by Academia 2063 and the African Union Commission at a moment when Africa's agri-food system stands at a decisive crossroad. As we all know, across the continent, demand for safe, nutritious, and processed food is rising rapidly, driven by population growth, urbanization, and changing diets. Yet, productivity growth remains stubbornly low. Climate shocks are intensifying, and innovation ecosystems are underperforming. The evidence is now unequivocal. Africa's agri-food challenge is not a lack of technologies, but I submit a failure to deploy, govern, and scale them effectively. In my view, this is why the 2025 ReSAKSS Annual Trends and Outlook Report, ATOR, is both timely and consequential. Its core message is very clear. Moving Africa's technology frontier is not about isolated breakthroughs, but indeed about integrating technological, institutional, and governance innovations within coherent, evidence-driven strategies. Technology is necessary, but again, I submit never sufficient. Decades of experiences that is confirmed empirically by ATOR 2025 shows us clearly that Africa's agricultural growth has relied disproportionately on land expansion rather than productivity and efficiency gains. This explains why growth has too often failed to translate into sustained poverty reduction, food security, or resilience. Further, ATOR 2025 reframes the technology debate around three complementary pathways. One, advancing technological progress. Two, improving technical efficiency. And three, reducing transaction costs across the agri-food systems. This framing matters. Frontier technologies only deliver impact when farmers, processors, and SMEs can access inputs, finance, markets, knowledge, and risk management tools. And indeed, when institutions enable learning, adaptation, and accountability. I also submit that Africa's technology frontier is broad, but again, it is yet underutilized. As the report clearly documents an expanding and impressive toolbox, digital and AI-enabled advisory services, geospatial applications, improved seed systems and biotechnology, mechanization, precision irrigation, livestock innovations, insect farming, aquaponics, and climate-smart processing and value additions. But I submit that yet adoption remains limited. Most of our African countries show high need and growing readiness for AI-enabled agriculture. But I submit very low effective use, pointing to substantial room to act through targeted investment, regulatory reform, and indeed capacity building. Ladies and gentlemen, crucially, ATOR 2025 cautions against techno-optimism. Poorly governed digitalization can widen inequalities, exclude our women and youth, and increase environmental pressure. Technology must therefore be fit for purpose, climate smart, and inclusive by design. Institutions are the real technology frontier. Perhaps what I gathered as the most important insight for ATOR 2025 is this. Africa's real technology frontier is institutional. Weak agricultural R&D systems, fragmented seed and biosafety regulations, under-resourced extension services, and shallow finance continue to constrain innovations at scale. Agricultural R&D spending remains below African Union targets, with uneven capacities across our countries. At the same time, the report highlights the transformative potential of digitally enabled producer organizations and cooperatives as our trusted intermediaries that aggregate demand, reduce transaction costs, broker digital services, and anchor inclusive innovation systems under the new CADEP framework. The Kampala Declaration is a strategic reset. The Kampala CADEP Declaration, coming into effect in January 2026, I believe, offers Africa a decisive reset. The next decade, under the CADEP Strategy and Action Plan 2026 to 2025, must shift from commitments to implementation, from pilots to scaling, and from technology adoption to technology leadership. This will require, I submit, sustained investment in science, in data, and in digital infrastructures, in regional harmonization of our regulations to unlock scale, in blended finance to crowd in private investment, and in robust accountability systems, anchored in credible and quality data and metrics. From potential to performance, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Africa, in my view, does not need to import a single model of agri-food transformation. What we need, I believe, is strategic coherence, linking technology, institutions, finance, and governance grounded in evidence and adapted to African realities. The ATO 2025 provides that evidence. The responsibility now lies with us, policymakers, researchers, private actors, and development partners to translate insights into action and ambition into results. If we succeed, Africa's agri-food system will not only feed our continent, they will generate jobs, resilience, value addition, and global leaderships in sustainable development. I must say that as we conclude this ReSAKSS annual conference, let us then first express deep gratitude to Academia 2063, the African Union, and all our partners for convening us around such vital theme. This discussion over these days, grounded in the powerful evidence of the 2025 Annual Trends and Outlook Report, indeed have illuminated both the urgency of our challenges and the immense promise ahead. We have reaffirmed the central truth that Africa's agri-food transformation is not constrained by a lack of technologies. Our toolbox, as I mentioned earlier, is rich. AI-driven advisories, geospatial analytics, biotechnology, precision mechanization, climate-smart seeds, digital platforms, insect-based proteins, aquaponics, and more. Yet, adoption lags. Yield gaps persist at 40 to 60% of key crops, and growth has too often come from land expansion rather than efficiency of innovation. So again, the real frontier, as ATO 2025 so compellingly argues, is institutional. Strengthening our R&D, harmonizing our regulations, resourcing extension, deepening finance, and empowering digitally enabled cooperatives and producer organizations to reduce transaction costs and scale inclusive impact. With the Kampala-Kadeb Declaration guiding our path, we have a once-in-a-generation strategic reset. This is no longer about renewed commitments. It is indeed about delivery. The declaration's 22 bold targets, boosting agri-food outputs by 45%, slashing post-harvest losses by 50%, tripling intra-African trade, mobilizing over $100 billion investment, achieving zero hunger, reducing stunting and poverty, empowering our women, youth, and vulnerable groups, and putting at least 30%, I got a call coming, putting at least 30%, Jesus. Sorry. Putting at least 30% of agricultural land under sustained management demand urgent coordination action. If we succeed again, Africa's agri-food systems will not only feed the continent, they will generate jobs, resilience, value addition, and global leadership and sustainable development. I wish you all a fruitful deliberations and look forward to the collective actions that will follow these deliberations. And I thank you.
Your Excellency, Ambassador Carr, thank you so much. We have received our marching orders. So we have what it takes to move forward and to move from potential to delivery. Now let's learn more about the report, key findings in the report, key highlights that the researchers were able to gather during the production process. To take us through a quick overview of the report, I will invite the co-editor of the 2025 ATOR, who is equally the chief scientist at Academia 2063, Professor Christian Henning. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much. Let me first share my screen. So, Your Excellencies, dear Chairman and dear participants, I'm very happy as one of the co-authors and the chief scientist of Academia 2063 to give you an overview of the annual Trend and Outlook Report 2025. So let me start with a very specific background of this A-Tour 2025, and this mainly goes to global trends and challenges. So a general challenge, at least the last 10 years, is that food markets are in disarray. What it means is that markets, especially global markets, are no longer optimal coordination mechanisms. Markets fail providing important ecosystem services and also healthy nutrition. So we have obesity in industrialized countries, and we have undernutrition in so-called development countries. And even recently, we have even both obesity and undernourishment in African countries. And we also do not have equal access and social justice. So this is a general failure of the market system, which at least the last 10 years could be observed. On top on this, we have observed at least since 2025, a reordering of global trade, economic and political systems. Trumpism, the Ukraine war and the Gaza invasion are very specific framework conditions which definitely make food system transformation much harder and more difficult in any country, but particular also in Africa country. And as a very particular trend, we observe a general agri-food system transformation all over the world, but particular in Africa, we can conclude that Africa stands at a decisive juncture in this transformation, and the aim is to contribute to a sustainable and inclusive development. And this, as we have heard already, and which the A-Tour also shows in its different chapters, needs a bundle of technical, institutional, and social political innovations embedded in a coherent strategy under CAADP 2035, the so-called Kampala Declaration, which is also a very specific moment that this A-Tour 2025 just came out directly when this important Kampala Declaration has been adopted. Now, if we look more specifically to this particular A-Tour, Moving Technology Frontiers in African Agri-Food System, then this tries to contribute to this agenda. It explores pathways for advancing Africa's agri-food technology frontiers in ways to promote sustainable, resilient, and inclusive development. Now, particular cross-cutting questions which are developed in this A-Tour is understanding Africa's productivity lag, especially compared to other developing regions like South Asia or South America. Understanding technological pathways for transformation, particularly the role of digital technologies, biotechnology, and compared to conventional farm technologies. And as we heard already many times, but I'm happy to go a little bit more into detail on this, it is not only a technical problem, but it's also to a large extent a governmental problem. And so we are looking for the right institutions, governance, and policy strategies. And last but not least, because all of this happens in an environment where we do not ex ante know exactly what is the right strategy. So we definitely need learning. And for this, we need data, measurement, and models which help us to better understand what are the specific problems, what are the specific impacts of different policies, and how do we adapt policies that they have the most effective, most efficient impact. Now, just briefly, Africa is lagging behind. In particular, what we observe, and if you look on the right figures, then compared to Latin America or South Asia, we observe that the technical progress gross compared to these regions is definitely much lower in sub-Saharan Africa. And not only this, if we look for blue to orange, if we are looking to different time periods, then this growth is even further lagging behind more recently. And as a consequence of this, we also observe, different to Asia and South America, that in Africa, we do have definitely significant progress in reducing poverty and undernourishment, but compared to these two regions, we are still lagging behind in Africa. And the question is why? One reason, and this is what we see here, is that compared to these regions, technical progress, so increasing productivity, is far less the source of increased production in Africa compared to these other regions, but it's much more extension of land and much less technical progress. So this is what in the future Africa wants and has to change. And if we go deeper and comparing now this public investments which are necessary to induce this, we see again, comparing Africa on the right side to the other regions, just take the gray bar, which is public spending per capita, then we see that Africa is here also lagging behind. But as we will see, it's not only about the total amount, it's also about the allocation across different policy programs. Now, to go a little bit more into the technical pathways of transformation, we heard this already. We have different pathways of growth, and I tried to explain this with this little graph. So if we see here the technology frontier of conventional farming, then these new innovative technologies shifting the frontier, basically getting for the same input more output. This is technical progress. But this is not the only reason why productivity is low and how we can increase this. We also have something that compared to the frontier, the practical farms for different reasons are not on the frontier. So they are even not taking full advantage of existing technologies like conventional farming. And so one important factor to promote productivity is also to reduce technical efficiency, bringing the farmer to the frontier of the conventional technology. So we have to disentangle, do we really need a new frontier? If it's really useful, if farmers are then just further away from this frontier, or do we need to bring the farmers on the frontier, so reducing technical efficiency? Now, in terms of technologies, biotechnology, digital technology definitely shifts the frontier, but as I said, we need enabling environment that the farmer can follow, and in particular role plays digital technologies, which are not only shifting frontiers, but as we show in the A2 2025, this is also an interesting technology which also helps to bring farmers to the frontier. Now, the last thing which we need to think about is that it is not only a technical problem, but we also have we need innovative political institutions and processes. And especially if we look here, we can think of a political technology. So we, particularly in Africa, do not only want to improve economic growth, but it should be inclusive. This means that particular vulnerable population should, like the poor or women or the youth, should participate in the growth. And so we are particularly have to look for not only pushing growth, but find the sectors and value change where if growth happen, especially vulnerable population is participating. And this is a next important technological political question Africa has to solve. And we can also find here some political innovation, and we can also improve political inefficiency to get to the frontier what is possible in terms of politics to promote technological growth. And the last thing is not only inclusiveness, but growth, but it's also ecosystem services. And here we have to find the right mix of different policies. Now, because all of this is not perfectly known ex ante, so we need also learning, and here we need observational learning. This is why we need good data to track the development, to better understand which policy works and why, and how should we change this. And particularly, we need political experiments, so testing specific things in living labs. This is part of the new political frontier. And we need, and this is now the process, communicational learning. In the process, there is a lot of knowledge available in different stakeholders in private sector. And so we need to bring together all of this knowledge. And for this, we need particular political processes like participatory modeling, mutual accountability, multi-stakeholder processes, which also include scientific models with practical political knowledge. Now, the A tour tackles all of this. And just to give you a brief overview, we can just subdivide the 17 chapters in 5 parts. The first one I mentioned already, basically is the conceptual and analytical framework. The second part, which is the largest part, is about the technological frontier, particularly the role of digital and biological versus conventional innovations. And here we have chapter 3, which is mainly focused on digital farming. We have chapter 5, which is mainly focused on new digital e-markets, e-cooperatives, and e-advisory systems. So using digital technologies also for this new innovative organizational forms. Then chapter 4 is about biotechnology. And then we also have further technological chapters on livestock, insect farming, and aquaponics, which are also new, interesting biological technologies. But we also combine this with the conventional technologies and look also into this, basically how technical efficiency can be improved. So bringing farmers to the frontier of this conventional technology, which is chapter 6, mechanization, processing, chapter 7, irrigation, chapter 8. So this is a complete overview of all of these different technologies. And this is exactly the message of the A to 25. We need all of them, and different countries might need different technologies to a different extent. The third part is about the governance, institutions, and innovative ecosystems. And public policy plays an important, crucial role for getting technological progress actually implemented on the ground. And here we have chapter 12, which is particular on the research and extension system. And then we have chapter 13, which picks on seed regulation and policy framework. Chapter 14 is about the new digital organizational forms, in particular on smallholder. And the featured issue is on Science for Africa Foundation, which is a very good example of an Africa Lead Science and Innovation platform. Then chapter 4 is about global lessons and South-to-South cooperation. Here we draw from lessons from China on food system transformation. We have an interesting chapter on digital twin technology and the particular use in Europe and compared to Africa, to what extent this can also be used in Africa. And we have chapter 17, which distills the Latin American experience in agri-food system transformation. The last, but definitely not least chapter is about the data indicators and accountability. And here we present 2 decades of cut-up implementation and refer to 27 core indicators, which have been tracked over this long time, and see how these indicators develop and how this can be used to find better policies in the future. Summing up, this A2 25 lines in a long history. The A2 is a flagship analytical publication of Academia 2063 in collaboration with partners, continent-wide, regional, and international partners. And it supports basically evidence generation, policy dialogue, investment planning, and within the Comprehensive African Agriculture Development Program. The 2025 aid tour comes at a critical policy moment. I explained already the background, but particular that the endorsement of the Kampala Declaration associated with the CAADP Strategy and Action Plan 2026-2035. And this sets ambitious targets for the agri-food sector and tries finally to catch up with other regions. And to achieve these commitments requires addressing structural and institutional bottlenecks. And here, as the aid tool clearly shows, innovative technology play a very important role. So we examine the drivers and constraints for moving African technology frontiers, and by this, the aid to 2025 seeks to help policymakers, researchers, investors, and practitioners to design strategies that unlock innovation, lead sustainable and inclusive growth. In doing so, it supports the vision of a more productive, resilient, and equitable continental agri-food system aligned with the Kampala Declaration and CAADP 26-23 Strategy and Action Plan. And I think this is a very interesting contribution, and I think this conference where different chapters are discussed is very important, and I very much look forward to the next days where we discuss with you the different aspects, and I'm sure that in the end we can conclude and come up with an even better strategy for the future in Africa. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Henning, for the overview of the 2025 Annual Trends and Outlook Report. And quick note to our participants, over the next 2 days, we are going to go in depth to talk about the various parts and chapters of the report that have just been presented. The race against time has officially begun. We have a lot of interesting things to say, and we don't have a lot of time for that. We are moving on to a high-level panel, and I will now invite the moderator of this session to take us through the session and the discussions with the high-level panelists. We have around 35 minutes to make this happen instead of 45 as initially planned. So let me say 35 to 40 minutes at the most. Let me welcome Dr. Canisius Kanangire, Executive Director of the African Agricultural Technology Foundation, AATF. Over to you, sir.
Thank you very much, Dr. Butake. It means that we need to show speed. And that is, it is not very easy. I want to start by thanking Academia 2063 for giving us this opportunity, AATF and myself, and also for congratulating you for the publication of this ATO report. Especially, I will congratulate you for choosing the theme of moving the technology frontier in African food system, because indeed we African face a number of challenges, including food and nutrition security, climate change issues, low productivity, etc., post-harvest management issues, and low access to innovation, which certainly call for Africa to revisit how we adopt and effectively use technologies which can address all those challenges and embed them into institutional reforms that will provide an enabling environment for that kind of technologies to produce impact and transform the agricultural sector and the livelihoods of the smallholder farmers in particular. But how do we do that? And that is the main question that I will ask to my panelists. I have the privilege to moderate the high panel constituted by eminent scientists and agri-food system experts And we have here Dr. Philip Osano, CEO of C4 ICRAF. You are welcome. We have Professor Schengen Fan, Chair Professor and Dean, Academy of Global Food Economics and Policy, College of Economics and Management, Chair China Agricultural University and former DG IFPRI. You are welcome, Professor. And we also have Dr. Enoch Chikawa, Director Economy Opportunity for Africa at Gate Foundation. Dr. Chikawa is a leader in agricultural science and agribusiness, a renowned promoter of agricultural innovations that drive productivity and income growth for smallholder farmers. Welcome, Dr. I will immediately go to the questions I'm trying to raise as recommended by the hosts. I will start with you, Dr. Osano. Africa's agricultural research system face the twin challenges of persistent underinvestment and a fragmented institutional and geographic architecture that constrain the translation of research into development outcomes. From our perspective, from your perspective, what does a development, what does a future-ready technological research system require?
Thank you, Dr. Canisius. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, and I mean, first, let me start by also just congratulating the Academia 2063 for the publication of the article. This is quite a milestone. Secondly, I think to your question, just to start by recognizing the fact that we all know that over the last 30 to 40 years, there's been quite a lot of advancement in terms of science and technology in Africa, including investments in agriculture research and research that looks at associated systems such as water and natural resources that, you know, are very important for agricultural production and productivity. At the same time, of course, one of the ironies that we're dealing with is that despite increase in knowledge, we are not seeing concomitant and correspondent increase in terms of the application of that knowledge and technologies to development. And so we are seeing in many cases actually development that is not driven by science and research. And so I think the question that we're dealing with, for example, here at C4 ICRAF and a number of institutions that work on agriculture research and research on climate systems, soil science, and so on is what exactly is the return on investment in some of the, research work that we do, and whether it really makes sense to continue with investing in research without really investing in how do we make sure that we translate that research and knowledge that's generated out of our work into meaningful decisions by farmers, by policymakers, and by communities and non-government organizations. So I think in terms of, for example, the work that we do at C4 ICRAF, we are very strong looking at issues of soil and soil health. We currently run a land degradation surveillance framework across Africa that has been going on for 20 years, quite a massive data set of, soil health and soil health data that is very useful for the policy community, including, of course, informing not just the indicators of CADAP, but in terms of helping maybe enabling a system of soil information that can be shared and utilized for information and decision making across countries. And also more recently, actually, now we've deployed this in terms of supporting the implementation of the outcomes from the Africa Fertilizer and Soil Health Summit that was held here in Nairobi in 2024. But I think in terms of just your question, I was reflecting on it, having listened to the presentation by Christian, and I thought about, there are three things that I wanted to highlight. The first one and most important is that, for us to really have a future ready system for research, we need to make sure that we develop a fit for purpose infrastructure that supports research for both, the broad agri-food system. And why do I say this? Because if you look at the current status of research and status of technology across Africa, no doubt we are in a good place when it comes to deployment of conventional technologies. And Christian talked about irrigations and mechanization and things like that. But for fourth industrial revolution, we need to make investment really that would help really catalyze development of advanced infrastructure, but also like in terms of middleware infrastructure and how we can facilitate that. So if you look at, for example, just high computing facilities in the continent, there are very few, probably 2 or 3 countries have that, that kind of system. If you look at Earth observation and remote sensing, we've talked about, using remote sensing and Earth observation data. A few countries, of course, now have set up national space agencies. And of course, having this kind of space agencies can help enable access of data from remote sensing that can be combined with in-situ monitoring for different kind of indicators that we're interested for and for promoting productivity and production. The second thing that I wanted to highlight, of course, which I think is no-brainer because I think it's covered also in the report, is the need to invest in human capital development. I think Christian referred to biotechnology as one of those areas that, new technologies where we need investment. We do have experience here at C4Craft that we've been part of the Africa Plant Breeding Academy, where we're actually training breeders from across Africa on gene editing, on different orphan crops or crops that are, indigenous crops that are currently underinvested when it comes to research, and even recently integrating new technologies such as artificial intelligence and so on, and how we can then get breeders to actually really respond to the needs at country level. And this is just an example, for example, when it comes to biotechnology. But if you look at other kind of technologies, I've talked about space sciences, where we see quite a lot of rapid advances. There are other technologies that we could also think about. So I think just looking at that system about human capital and expertise that's required in the continent, that's very critical. And then lastly, I just wanted to also highlight this is a bit the idea that we need to think about integrated technologies. I think right now the challenge we are seeing is that we all talk about different technologies in isolation. But if you want to think about a simple technology, just a dashboard, think about a dashboard and think about just how dashboards have revolutionized decision making. When even, for example, just using handheld devices by mobile phones to, large platforms like I know the African Union has a continental early warning system where they can map, potential climate hazards across different countries. But all behind the dashboard are actually all system of data, integration from different platforms and different sources. And unless we look at technology also in that integrated system, we still have challenges because then you have gaps that are related to interoperability, and then there are limitations around having a convergence around data that can be integrated for decision making. So I think allow me, Canisius, to stop there, and of course I'm happy to expound a little more if there's an opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will add another question. You talked about biotechnology and some other technologies that are linked to that. And I would like to ask you a question related to many studies, including even in this report that we are launching, that suggests that the government ensures responsible enabling regulations that allow timely access to beneficial biotechnology products within while safeguarding, public and environmental health. How vital are functional regulatory systems in the governance of innovative and emerging technologies for the success of Africa's technology future?
Yeah, thanks, Canisius. I think I liked, when Christian presented, he talked about this governance of transformation, talked about political efficiency and so on. Having efficient and predictable regulatory systems in countries is very important because that's what drives investment, and investment particularly by private sector, but also by public sector, because it drives where public puts in resources around aligning with the different development objectives in any country. I think for the case where we are looking at food systems, it's very important that, I'll give you an example how this is important. So one of the in our plant breeding training, where we train plant breeders on gene editing, using CRISPR and other, we look at countries which already have enabling regulatory systems for biotechnology, and I think there are very few, less than 10, if I'm not wrong. They're just about 9 or 10 of them across Africa, and of course that's constraining a lot of opportunities when it comes to, how we can deploy different kind of technologies for gene editing. And part of the reason that we are seeing, even the countries that have these systems in place, you could see, I can give an example of Kenya, you could see a push and pull, see a lot of tension, because the public perception of risk is a very important part. And I don't think we invest a lot in terms of helping really educate the public around any technology. No technology is benign. Every technology has its benefits and cost, and the costs are perceived by the public as risk. And so if the perception of the cost in terms of risk outweighs the perception of the benefits, which might not be visible, then it becomes a really challenge to for technology adoption. So I think it's very important, of course, even as we have this conversation, that we think about investing. I think there are two critical constituencies or stakeholders that are very important. One, of course, is the media, because media drives a lot of perception, public perception, and then in countries where we have systems where decisions is made through parliamentary system, of course, having legislators being educated and made aware about the potential benefits of this kind of technologies become very important. But I would just say that how any new technology or technology that we don't understand very well becomes perceived in terms of risk. That's usually the entry point for the public.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Philip. Let me ask Professor Fan one question related to the report. Professor Fan, you contributed to chapter 15 of this report entitled here, Technology Development and Adoption in Chinese Agri-Food Systems, Implication for Africa. In African agri-food systems, users of agricultural technology include smallholder farmers, agricultural cooperatives, and local governments, each with distinct capacities and need. What key lessons for Africa can be drawn from China's stakeholder incentive for agricultural technology innovation and dissemination?
Well, thank you, Canisius. I'm very happy to be here. When I was at IPRI, we were very proud to support CAT implementation under the leadership of Osman Pariano. So I came back to China about 6 years ago, and through various means, I continue to support our friends in Africa through lessons, experience sharing. So what China has experienced and what Africa can learn from, even avoid some of the mistakes. Instead of some of the principles, instead of some sort of bullet point, I wanted to give you some concrete examples. One concrete example is science and technology backyard. So basically, the students, professors from universities will go to a village to work with farmers. They stay there to work with them all the time. So students write their thesis there. Professors do their research over there. And obviously, it's not just technology, as many mentioned. It's a policy, it's a market, it's a trade. So through that so-called science and technology backyard, we bring, let's say, technologies, capacity, market, trade, business opportunity into the village, into each household. So we call it science and technology backyard. And I think some of the studies demonstrated that smallholders, farmers benefit from that. The local communities obviously benefit from that. Consumers also benefit from the overall sort of science and technology backyard. So that's one example. Another example by the private sector, Syngenta. You might know that China actually owns the Syngenta. And then the Syngenta innovated a model called MAP, Modern Agriculture Platform. As you know, the Chinese used to use the community or so-called township or even county level sort of demonstration or extension agencies supported by the government. But as part of the reform, all these government-led extensions don't work very well. It's market-driven. So MAP, the Modern Agriculture Platform, again, it's a platform to bring smallholders, bring market players, input suppliers, output purchasers together, help the farmers. So farmers will have access to insurance, finance, technologies, markets, and so on. And now even government-led extension agencies are part of the map. I'm very happy to report to you that this Syngenta is experimenting that in Kenya. So hopefully we will have some concrete results. Another one I wanted to mention is called a quiet revolution, the rice value chain in Asia, including China. So basically, it's a rice processors in China. Rice processors is a private sector, and these rice processors sign a contract with smallholders with regard to providing seeds, providing inputs, then also purchase the rice output from the smallholders. Then the processors will obviously mill the rice to make sure that it has the same standards, same quality, same variety from smallholders. Then process and link to supermarkets in Beijing, Shanghai, even in Hanoi, in Bangkok. So this we call it quiet revolution. Professor Tom Riordan and some of the researchers from China clearly demonstrated that model. So the smallholders benefit from access to finance, access to markets, and then the output price also was guaranteed by the processors. And consumers benefit from that because the rice they consume is high quality, it's safe. There's no pesticide residues and so on. I think these are some of the concrete examples we can actually share from Africa. Enoch will speak about maybe China-Africa collaboration. I think on hybrid rice in West Africa is a very good example. The whole chain, the whole thing. But I think we must go beyond just rice. Osman knows that the coarse grain, sorghum, millet are so nutritious, healthy, and sustainable. So we can work around all these value chains to make sure that smallholders are a very important part of that, the communities, and then obviously government. So I think, Kenneth, you asked me about the active partners in the whole value chain, even whole food system, and incentivize every one of them. And from China's side, we'll be very happy to share some of the experience, even some of the lessons, mistakes you could avoid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Indeed, I think we have a lot to learn from the journey and the trajectory that China has taken. Let me go to a totally different area from the experience. Professor Fan, African research and development institutions have long faced significant challenges, particularly funding. Now that there is a decline in public funding of development cooperation, what priority areas should South-South cooperation, such as between China and African countries, focus on to enhance local research and development, technology transfer, and sustainable development?
That's a very good question, very timely question. We know that US, Europeans begin to move away from development aid. I always said that Africa needs to spend its own money on agriculture development, on agriculture research, not depending on other countries, not depending on aid. So for example, when I was working at ISNA, International Service for National Agriculture Research, at that time we asked the countries to spend more than 1% of their agriculture GDP on agriculture research. I think that China is more than 1% now. For your information, the Chinese agriculture research investment is bigger than US plus Brazil, India combined. So, and public and private investment. This is the key driver of the total factor productivity growth. I think Christian has presented the total factor productivity growth in Asia, in Brazil, is particularly high. That didn't come from nowhere. It came from the investment in agricultural research. So Africa must do that. Now, obviously, we can learn from each other, the South-South cooperation. I think when the Western countries begin to move away from Africa, from Southeast Asia, now, can we try to learn to work together, South-South, the China, India, Brazil, South Africa, then Sub-Saharan Africa? Can we work together to share some of the technologies, share some of the best practices? I think there are great opportunities. So for example, the keyword capacity has been mentioned many, many times. Yes, so we can work together to build African capacity. I must say that the China set up this so-called agriculture technology demonstration centers in Africa. The results have been mixed, partly because the local capacity has not been strengthened. So we must use these demonstration centers to bring Africans, to train them to build their capacity. I think that's a very critical element of the South-South cooperation. Now, obviously, I'm very happy to hear that the AI, obviously the carbon credit, will be the key topics of the COP32 to be held in Addis Ababa. I'm very happy to hear that. First time I hear that. I think AI technology could really be a game changer. Africa can actually jumpstart, can really, let's say, go over some of the steps. For example, just like phone. Africa didn't have the fixed line phones, but now they have cell phone. So you can, jump some of the hope, go to the next stage. I think AI is the same thing. I think somebody mentioned that the African farmers have cell phones. That cell phone could have, let's say, AI software there. Yeah, that software can allow farmers access to market information, technology information, or can access to extension service agents and so on. I think that one could be potentially the area that China and India, to some extent, to work with Africa to really accelerate that program. We don't need to wait. We can do that right now. And I think we have almost 2 years for the COP. It will be great to demonstrate some concrete results in COP32 in Addis Ababa. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Fan. Now, 2 questions to Dr. Chikawa. Dr. Your organization has been at the forefront of supporting sustainable and inclusive agricultural transformation for African farmers and government. Given that informal systems, especially farmer-to-farmer and farmer-to-farmer seed exchanges are prevalent and play a vital role in many African countries where they still dominate existing seed system. What role can development partners play to support growth and attract private investment and foster the development of improved crop varieties?
So thank you very much. It's also a wonderful privilege for me to join in the congratulations for Academia 2069 for 2064 for this publication. When I read through the summaries and also listening to the chief scientist running through the report, a lot of what he talked about resonates with what we are trying to do at the Gates Foundation. You all know that we made an announcement that we are remaining with 20 years as the Gates Foundation to make the biggest impact in the remaining period. And a lot of our focus is maybe on a lot of the innovations that are already highlighted in the report. But going specifically to your question around informality versus formal systems. At times it becomes just an academic conversation, because what happens is that once the innovation is accessible and affordable by the majority of those who are best positioned to use them, you want to think of a different pluralistic system, and farmer-to-farmer exchanges of knowledge and information and practices and experiences will continue to happen. A lot of the farmers are adopting because they saw their neighbor doing something. I mean, you have seen this, Dr. Kanangire here. You introduce, let's say, drought tego in a particular village. Only a handful will be early adopters because they have extra information. Either they have their son or daughter who works in the city, they bring in a bag of this new seed. They plant it in their own field. The neighbors will see the unique difference between that farmer is planting and what they are putting in their own fields. So there's a source of farmer-to-farmer exchange. You exchange where you source, you exchange agronomic practices. So I would say this delineation, like formal and informal, it becomes more academic. I think we need to focus on the principles of what will be needed to sustain a very efficient seed system. And there are no regret areas, which we know things like your quality assurance, your quality control system, your standards, where farmers will know this is good seed, this is not good seed. This is grain, this is seed. This is pure, not pure. Once you come up with that standardized system, and then you are focusing on what matters the most, things like affordability. And this is again what the Gates Foundation is doing here with many collaborations. I was also very much pleased to hear Professor Schengen here talking about the South-South collaboration, what China has done, and what Africa can learn. We have a lot of things that we are doing together. I'm familiar with the ATDCs. I was part of that, trying to explore the learnings. But I think the key thing here is that Africa needs a fit-for-purpose innovation ecosystem that is unique for Africa. And I'm sure the challenge for Africa is just you want to copy and paste. The environment in Africa is not the same as what you have in China. It can be close to India and China, the South-South. It is not the same as the one you have in Europe and so on. Like what Professor Schengen said here, Africa can also even leapfrog in many, many, many other fronts, especially when it comes to the digital revolution, AI, and so on. You go to Kenya, you find that the mobile phone ownership is a lot higher than in most places. And as a result, Kenya came up with their own digital payment system, which was the first in the world. So I think it's very important even to look at what do we already have in the continent? What is our own context? And then how do we make sure that we develop the innovations that will be accessible and affordable, and that can guarantee quality on an ongoing basis? I'm sure people choose formal system because you can always vouch the quality. You can have traceability. You can go back to where where it all started, and then you begin to identify what we call the value of death in a seed system. So there are two areas where we believe if you have that, it doesn't matter really in the last mile. It can be formal, it can be informal, as long as these two are safeguarded. The first one is actually making sure that your early generation seed is going to be producing quality parentals. Because if you start with a poor early generation seed, it doesn't matter what you do in a production field. It doesn't matter what you do in the factory. You may put more chemicals. You can put a seed treatment. But if it was not pure to start with, you are not going to be carrying that quality control all the way. So last mile can be pluralistic. But the two things where you need to make sure quality is safeguarded is on the early generation seed. And as you know, the Gates Foundation has been working with many partners in Africa, and we came up with 2 models that are helping in the early generation seed. One is the Quali Basic Seed, which is for East and Southern Africa. Now it is helping 60 to 70 companies that don't have their own capacities to maintain purity of the parental seed. So this is kind of, you are now Uberizing kind of your early generation seed. Make sure that you handle that in one company, and then make sure all the other companies will benefit. But you're already safeguarding the early generation seed. And what used to happen is that all the public research, I can take one example here, let's say CIMIT will come up with a new climate resilient maize variety. But the breeder only comes up with a handful of pure seed, less than 1 kg. How do you multiply that 1 kg to become hundreds of thousands of certified seed? You won't do that unless you make sure that your early generation seed is taken care of. I would say right now we can do that at scale in Eastern Southern Africa through Quali Basic. In West Africa, there is a sister organization also which was created and incubated by ATF, which is also the Eco Basic, which is now focusing on West Africa. So that's number one. Number two, even if you do that, seed production is not easy. Even if you start with pure parentals, to actually be able to produce commercial seed at scale, especially when you go into hybrids and so on, you need to make sure that you know your split planting. At times you plant your male 3 days after your female, so that there is nicking when it comes to the pollination. That's another area we are beginning to work now to say, if you safeguard these 2 levels of your seed system, the rest is taken care of. It can be informal, farmer-to-farmer exchange of material, as long as you have taken care of the most sensitive, which we call the value of death. And there is now enough models that have been taking place and so on. So you go to any system, you can go to China, you can go also to India. Maybe just my last point there is maybe now looking at exactly what Professor Schengen said. Africa needs to invest in its own food system. You cannot subcontract your food security to somebody else. There are basic things which Africa must do. And again, as Professor said here, 1% of your agricultural GDP should be the minimum. Today, Africa is far from getting there. I'm glad in the CADEP, it is now written, in black and white. We need to give oomph to the CADEP document and make sure that it becomes practical. And I'm glad we are having those conversations with our new Commissioner for Agriculture at the Africa Union. I think he's a very practical man. I respect him a lot. And we are going to be working now within the CADEP so that we can now begin to make the CADEP a lively document which is implementable, and that will be able to change the circumstances of the quantity.
Okay. Thank you very much, Dr. Chikawa. You have addressed actually my second question, which was referring also to what Professor Fan has talked about on how to fund the research and development on the continent, the technology transfer, and the economic opportunities during this era where we have very low appetite of funding through grants the African agriculture by different donors. Ladies and gentlemen, participants, let me summarize because the time is over by just giving some bullets. First of all, research and development cannot create impact if not transferred to the farmers. So that is one thing that we need to understand. The second is we need evidence-based policies. That is the enabling environment that will help us have a transformation in our agriculture. The third is investment to advance infrastructure and human capital is critical if we want to create a sustainable transformation. The other is we need to bundle technologies. We need to integrate technologies when we go to our farmers. We need to create a regulatory framework which incentivize investment in agriculture from the private sector and other investors. Another point is science, technology, and innovation backyard. It is the seeing as believing in the village, which will be actually transferred by ourselves, scientists, and experts in agriculture. Another point is modern agriculture platform need to be adopted so that we can, again, provide the support which is needed. And we need to consider value chain rather than just piecemeal services. Africa needs to spend its own money on agriculture, not depend on others. And Dr. Chikawa has said, you cannot subcontract your food security. The other point is we need to learn from one another in our South-South cooperation. However, we need not to think that we will copy and paste. There will be need of adaptation because solutions will be tailored to the issues that we have. On improvement of the seed, which is the foundation of improving productivity, we need to know that the first thing we need to do is quality assurance, quality control, be able to produce quality seed in sufficient quantities and affordable so that they can be accessible by the farmers. And then farmer-to-farmer exchange will be one of the mechanisms, but working on already improved seed. I think farmer-to-farmer is not a sin, is not something to prevent, but we need rather to feed that system with high-quality seeds. Last one, we need to have an environment which is fit for a purpose in innovation. So we need to have an environment which promotes innovation, and that is the ecosystem that African continent, and I would say African Union, should help us establish so that indeed we have an environment which is fertile for that kind of change. I want to conclude by very much thanking my high-level panel. Thank you very much, Dr. Philip. Thank you, Professor Fan. Thank you, Professor Chikawa. And thank you, participant, from where you are for listening to these eminent scientists. Thank you again. And Dr. Butake, back to you.
Thank you.
A virtual round of applause for Dr. Kanangire and our 4 high-level panelists for that insightful conversation. If you had time to check the chat, you could see that our participants are following up closely and are very much engaged in the conversation. And we are back on track when it comes to time. So thank you for the speed. We are talking about technology, and we're going to keep talking about technology over the next couple of days. So how about a poll to check the pulse of our AgTech priorities for all participants here? Take a minute, check out the poll on your screen. We have 3 questions for you. Read it and click your favorite answer in terms of ranking order. And we want to give you a few minutes to engage with this poll just so we get a sense of what are the top priorities in your opinion. If you were to sit across from a policymaker, what would you say is the most important tech for the various sectors addressed in the report? So we have 5 minutes to engage with this poll as we prepare to move into the next session. Over to you. Engage with the poll on your screen. I am seeing, I'm tracking the number of participants who are engaging with this poll. So we invite you to take a minute, answer the question, click, and then we can move on to the next session.
Lai,
Yes.
the host and the panelists are not allowed to vote. Is it by purpose?
Oh, no, you should be able to vote. I hope the participants are able to vote. If you have any issue, please let us know in the chat. Let's figure out what's wrong, why the host and panelists cannot access it. So we're leaving the poll open so that more participants can engage with it. In the meantime, we will be getting ready to move into our next session in a couple of minutes. We have a good number of panelists already here. So as we conclude the poll, we'll be getting ready to move into the next part of the discussion.
Dr. Butake, we
Yes.
seem to be having a problem. A number of people are not able to vote.
All right. Okay, thank you. We're going to sort it out. In the meantime, we have a short break. We have 10 minutes before we come back for the next session, where we will be discussing emerging technology pathways and regional lessons. So we are going to resume in exactly 10 minutes, just enough time for you to grab a coffee or to get some water and regain your seat. In the meantime, we're gonna check the poll to make sure that everyone is able to vote. I see that 25% of participants have already engaged with the poll. So we're gonna figure out what is causing the technical issue with the rest of them. In the meantime, we resume in exactly 10 minutes as we get ready for the next session. Thank you all and see you in a bit. Welcome back. If you were just joining us, we are here for day one of the ReSAKSS annual conference to launch the 17th edition of the ReSAKSS annual trends and outlook report. During the first part of this event, we had the official opening session with opening remarks, followed by framing remarks, a presentation of the report, and a high-level panel discussion. Now we are moving on to the various sessions to learn more about the findings of the report. We will be back for another round of the poll to give everyone a chance to vote. So if you haven't voted yet, do not worry, we are going to relaunch the poll later in the day. So our next session is going to be some sort of a roundtable discussion where we will have a series of presentations of some chapters from the report, followed by invited reactions. So this session is themed Emerging Technology Pathways and Regional Lessons. Please welcome our moderator, Dr. Getal Tadase, Director of Policy Intelligence at Academia 2063.
Thank you, Dr. Butaki. Good afternoon and good morning, colleagues, friends, depending where you are. We had a very interesting session, the first session with the speech and also the high-level panels. We have learned a lot, and one of the key conclusions that technology frontier in Africa is not about technical, but more of institutional and policies. So what are those institutions and what are those policies which are really critically relevant for pushing the frontier in African agri-food systems? So that is the whole agenda of our discussion now. But we start with some analytical frameworks. How do you conceptualize and how to look at this frontier shift into the agri-food systems, and also what we can learn from other regions, from China, from Latin America and European experience. So this is the whole session about it, and we have a very wonderful presenters who have contributed for these chapters to the author. So we will have four presentations, and then we will follow up with two discussants. So I will call each of the presenters, and each presenter have 8 minutes. And I start with Dr. John Olumingu, who is a senior research fellow at International Food Policy Research Institute. John was instrumental for the whole agri-food systems in Africa, for thinking and all these things. And he will share his chapter with Christian on how to conceptualize this technology of frontier within the agri-food systems. So thank you, John, and over to you. You have 8 minutes.
Thank you, Getao, and thank you again, Academia, and congratulations for putting together this report in the ReSAKSS tradition. So my presentation, actually my chapter presentation, I'm just the one presenting, but we put it together with Christian Henning that made a presentation earlier. It mirrors the report theme, moving the technology frontiers across in African agri-food system. So let me start with, just to make sure that we all agree or at least align with the definition, the working definition of food system as far as the Kampala Declaration is concerned. As you know, the new implementation cycle of the CADEP, the so-called Kampala Declaration that the Commissioner, His Excellency the Commissioner mentioned, starts this month for the next 10 years. So the working definition of food system for that declaration is that the food system gathers all the elements and activities that relate to production, processing, distribution, preparation, and consumption of food, and the output of these activities, including socioeconomic, environment, and all that. So by the very definition of food system, there is no way we can achieve innovation or transformation without governance. So that's it's very important to have that in mind. And the purpose of the framework that Christian and myself have put together within this chapter is to move beyond the traditional input-centric solutions, subsidies here or isolated tech fixes. We introduce a system-based framework that does three major things. First, we consider the interplay between science, institutions, policy, and socio-political dynamics. Again, there is no way we can achieve the type of innovation we expect without governance. We emphasize that technology is a lever of within a broader ecosystem, and of course, advocate for evidence-based, inclusive policy processes under real-world constraints. Again, it's food system, so the innovation, with the way we look at it, is really across all the component of food system, as I said, from production, processing, storage, distribution, retailing, and consumption. It is very important because unless we look at it as a system, we end up with fragmented food system where one component is doing well in terms of innovation and another one is not. Because it is a system, every time one component is not performing well, it affects overall system performance. So it's very important that we align those innovations across all the agri-food system component. Now, because of time, let me go straight to the findings. First, and we heard this in the previous presentation, integration is key. So we need to combine the smart technology, the smart policies, and smart institutions for holistic impact. Technology alone is insufficient without supportive policy framework and governance. One again. Two, there is no one-size-fits-all approach. Optimal agriculture investment varies across country and depends on country context. Yes, we have the 10% budget allocation. Those blanket targets across all the countries are not necessarily effective. Investment strategy must reflect structural conditions, institutional capacity, of course, in sometimes sectoral needs and SDGs priorities. Three, policy must address all innovation pathways, which are the technological progress. Christian mentioned that. So push the frontier, technical efficiency, how we, through training and extension to close the yield gap, transaction costs, how to improve market access through e-cooperative or credit. So that's very important. Four, we need to tailor evidence-based decision-making. Use policy modeling to identify high-impact sectors, cost-effective priorities, and SDGs trade-off and synergy. It is a system, so it means it's not every component of the system that suffers from the same technological issues. Embrace some model uncertainty and promote adaptive learning. How does the system learn from either mistake or progress or success or failures to improve as we go? Fifth, transform governance, not just tools. Tools are okay, but there is more here than just tools. We need to build participatory, transparent, and data-informed policy processes. We need to empower marginalized groups, women, youth, small-scale orders. Foster, of course, institutional environment where innovation can be to scale. Now, we know that in 2024, the Nobel Prize in Economics was awarded to Asimoglu, Johnson, and Robinson for the question of why institutions matter. And last year, it was awarded to Mokir, Ajian, and Howitt for how innovation drives growth. In that context, this chapter, our chapter, focuses on the question how institutions and innovations must be co-designed to achieve expected African food system transformation. So I'll stop here. Thank you.
Thank you, John, and thank you for this time presenting your findings. So, how to link institutions with innovations and within the framework of system thinking. So, I will come back to that, and then we move to the next presenter. Thank you, John, again. The next presentation is by Dr. Ting Meng. He's an associate professor from Academy of Global Food Economics and Policy, College of Economics and Management, China Agricultural Universities. And he will be talking about the experience of China. Talking about the experience of China in terms of technology adoption within the agro-food systems. And over to you. Thank you. You have 8 minutes.
Okay, great.
Sorry.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Ting Meng from China Agriculture University. I'm so glad to have this opportunity to share our research on technology development and adoption in Chinese agri-food systems implications for Africa. This is a joint research with Mr. Yuqi Mei and Professor Shenggen Fan. So in the next few minutes, I'd like to address 4 important questions. Number 1, why technology play an important role in China's agri-food systems transformation? Number 2, what are these key technologies along the supply chain? Number 3, how it can be applied for Africa. And the last one is what is our next step and future pathway. So the first section, when we review the last 70 years for China's agri-food system transformation, it can be divided into 3 stages. The first one is focused on grain production. So it's majorly try to improve and increase the quantity of grain. The second stage, since the WTO accession, the focus is on diversification. So not only grains, but also meat, vegetables, and fruits. Since 2020, the third stage, China began to look at the multiple goals and is such like food quality, sustainability, and also nutrition. So we know like China has a limited resource. We use 70% of the land and 6% of the water to feed 18% of the global population. During this process, technology do play a very important role in on one hand, it can improve the resource efficiency and productivity. And number 2, it also improve food safety and give us a balanced nutrition. Okay, China and Africa, we do have a good collaborations in technology like transfer and infrastructure investment and also institutional innovation. So In the second section, we will talk about what are these key technologies in China. So along the agri-food supply chain, for the upstream, middle stream, and the downstream, we have different segments. And for these systems, we have multiple stakeholders like government, farmers, companies, research institute, and also consumers. For each segment, I will name one technology, but in our report, we name a few, so you can read our the details. So regarding input, China used drought-tolerant seed technology to improve the yield. In arid areas, it can up to 15 to 20% higher. And on your right-hand side, you can see the figures, the trend. For the last 15 minutes, the market size for drought-tolerant seed being used in China has been 6 times than before. Regarding production, smart or digital agriculture technologies has been used to monitoring and for controlling, especially to have the real-time crop growth monitoring and also precise agriculture. And for this platform, at the bottom figure, you can see not only farmers, but also cooperatives and entities all play a role here. Regarding process, deep processing technology has been used. So not only with our farmers sell raw agriculture products, we also use like drying, extraction, refining, and packaging to have the agriculture products, which can largely enhance the added value for our agriculture products. Regarding marketing, e-commerce play a very important role. And in the picture, you can see a gentleman is selling agriculture products through e-commerce. And the advantage of this one is directly linking consumers and farmers together, and which will decrease the transaction cost and increase the efficiency. So the stakeholder farmers now not only can sell their products to national market, but can also to global markets. So regarding the last segments for consumption, traceable agriculture product can be used. And in the picture, you can see when you have a phone and you scan the barcode, then directly you get the products information, ordering information, and storage information, which can largely strengthen the food safety supervision along the supply chain. So to promote the technology adoption along the supply chain, China, for the policy, they do put this as a national strategy planning in a very high position. It has been like the innovation-driven development strategy has been written in our 14th 5 years plan. So government provide subsidy to like the technology being used and also give support to agriculture research and development, which provide good incentives for stakeholders, not only farmers, but also agriculture company. So let's move to the third section. We identify a few technologies can be used, can be shared with Africa. So basically, first is the environmental adapted technology, it including water saving technology and also a climate smart agriculture technology. Number 2 is high yield crop breeding technology. It can be used to increase the yield. And the last one is not only high yield and environmental friendly is our goal, but also nutrition and also inclusive. So multiple goal, the multi-wing technology is really the goal of our of the technologies being identified. So for the adoption, also need to consider the user of the technology, like whether the technology is for stakeholder farmers or it is for the farmers organization. So the last one is talk about the cooperation and innovation. So generally, we do need joint research and innovation, and especially in the global south, to have for the the exchange program and also training program. So the innovation should be on the certain areas like technology promotion, capacity building, but also the transaction and the trade and the value chain to add more value. And the last one is business model. Particularly for China and African joint production strategies, so we can work on agriculture and rural infrastructure investment, and also to bridge the funding and the technical services capacity. And the last one is to start to work on the pilot projects and later scaling up this technology adoption. So that's all for my presentation. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Meng, and thank you for completing your presentation within the time framework. And I think, colleagues, I encourage you to go through the details of the chapter. It has a lot of information about how China has been successful. And the simplest message that we get from this presentation is that there is no shortcut. We have to work along the value chains from inputs. You'll be surprised that the demand for drought tolerant varieties has increased 6 times, and then go to up to the consumptions where we apply the value, these chain technologies and all those things. So those are good information that we can adopt for our context in Africa. And also, I think they have laid out how to cooperate with South-South cooperation. Thank you very much. And now we move to the next experience from Europe. Dr. Fruus van Evert will share us about his chapter on the digital twin in European agriculture and then its relevance for Africa. And Doctor, the floor is for yours, and you have 8 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon. Thank you to the organization for inviting me to speak here today. And I will talk about this chapter 16, which has a fairly long title and a lot of content. But for today, for this presentation, I want to focus on the core of the chapter, which is the digital twin technology. Now, and the digital twin technology, it really starts with precision agriculture. I am pretty sure that you are familiar with precision agriculture. It can be either done as on the left-hand side on the screen here, where you fly a drone or use a satellite or something, and you end up with a prescription map which you load into your tractor equipment, and then you apply at different parts of the field exactly the right amount of fertilizer or something else that's needed there. But it can also be done as shown on the right-hand side of the slide here. You can have a sensor right on your tractor or your other equipment, make a measurement, and then on the go decide what application should be made. But there's a problem with that, because this kind of measurement only gives a view of what's happening at one specific point in time. And we can actually go a step further and use a crop soil model to offer a more integrated view of what's happening in the field. A crop soil model is a computer model, can consider the relation between different parts of the system. For example, the amount of potato tubers that are growing in the field, the number of leaves, the amount of leaves that's on the field, the amount of nitrogen that's in the soil. And of course, all these things are influenced by the weather, by irrigation, by fertilizer applications, and so on. And then when you use this approach, it can happen that you make a measurement, you determine there is not enough water in the soil. If you were doing a simple approach, you would say, okay, irrigate. But if you were using a crop soil model, you could make the determination that yes, there is not enough water in the soil right now, but it will have only a limited impact on crop growth rate in the next few days. And I have a weather forecast. It's starting to rain in a week or in 2 weeks, and then maybe it's not worth the while to irrigate. This kind of approach is not used a whole lot in crop growth in precision agriculture, but we've collected some examples of that and presented them in the book Precision Agriculture Modeling that is shown here. So in short, a crop soil model could be used in farming practice to monitor what's going on. Which of my fields has insufficient soil water, insufficient nitrogen? Maybe there's heat stress occurring somewhere. You can make predictions. Will there be enough water until next week, for example? And you can explore scenarios. What will happen if I do not anything? What will happen if I irrigate today or tomorrow or next week? And so on. So these models have a great a potential to support farmers in their tactical management, but there is a problem. They're models, they're abstractions of reality, and in many cases, the results of these models deviate from what's happening on the farm, which renders them almost useless for farmers. But there is a solution to that. It's called the digital twin. And I want to illustrate what a digital twin does by going back to the just using a model. And we have the real world. On the bottom of the slide, we have a model of the real world on the top of the slide. And we can use the model to plan, to forecast, and to monitor. And then the blue arrows indicate that we can use that information to do something in real life. But I just told you the model often deviates from what's happening in reality. And therefore, we make a digital twin out of the model by making measurements on the real world, using that information to update the real farm. And then, as the green arrows indicate, the information from the sensors combined with the model will give better information about what to do in the real farm. This is what that looks like in a real example for potatoes in the Netherlands. On the left-hand side, we're showing a leaf area index simulated with our model. On the right-hand side, tuber growth. And then you can see that this slide was made in the 1st of June of last year, at which point in time we did not have information about the entire year yet. And therefore, in the pink part, the right-hand side of each panel, we used forecast weather. And then when we move along through the season, we're halfway July, a measurement becomes available, indicated by the green dot from the drone. And then when that measurement deviates from what the model is predicting, we take sort of an average of the two, taking into the relative uncertainty of both the model and of the measurement. And we repeat that process whenever a new measurement becomes available. We adjust the model and make it such that the information provided by the model is useful for farmers. This is an example for potatoes in the Netherlands. In the chapter, we made an exercise and we considered what would be needed and what could be done for groundnuts in Senegal. And we came to the conclusion that yes, this technology would be useful there also. Then we did, and I will not go in depth here, we did also the economic analysis of the impact of digital twin technology at farm and economy-wide level for groundnuts in Senegal. I will refer you to the chapter for the conclusions, but in summary, I would like to say that digital twins can improve technical efficiency and resource management at the farm level, that digital twins by themselves will have a limited impact on the Sustainable Development Goals, and that the impact also depends on, of course, on complementary reforms in markets, organizations, and on public investment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. Thank you. I think, yes, the chapter has a lot more content and also presents some of examples and how really we can bring, because, I mean, ladies and gentlemen, you know that there is quite significant doubt about how precision agriculture can really apply in African context. And we can hear a lot of, some debates and all those things. So this is a typical example how we can really bring this type of things from the experience from Europe. And thank you, Dr. Van Evert and from Wageningen University. And thank you for your sharing experience. And also we encourage colleagues to go through the chapter. And then I think we move to the next presentation from Latin America. Our colleague, Dr. Valeria, regional representative at IFPRI, and she will share us her chapter and the experience from Latin America. And Doctor, the floor is for you. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. It's so nice to see you. And thank you for the invitation to present our chapter. As you know, it was written by also with my colleagues from IFPRI. So for this presentation, I will rush a little bit into some of these slides that I have because I really want just to concentrate in the final points because I think that they are more relevant for this kind of audience in which we're really concentrated in the policy. But I would like to kind of highlight some of the figures and things that we come up in our chapter to motivate you to read the chapter later on. So what we're concentrating here is to talk about Latin America and how lessons from Latin America can be important or interesting for Africa. However, as we all know, the two regions are very heterogeneous in a way, and even inside the regions, we have very heterogeneous countries. So it's very hard just to generalize and to make general conclusions, which that is something we will not want to do. So just to highlight some of the things that are different between the two regions, again, generalizing the two regions, Africa is more rapid population, and Latin America is a slowdown on that. Also in levels of urbanization, lower in Africa, higher in Latin America, and also the land endowments are very heterogeneous between the two regions, having more land available in Africa than in Latin America, which it will be an impact also or differences in terms of intensification of the production. But also in terms of how it has gone through the trajectories through time. Africa has been having a slower growth in TFP and more heterogeneous compared with Latin America. As a region, Africa is a net food importer, Latin America is a net food exporter. And also there are differences in terms of food security challenges in Africa compared to Latin America, which the biggest problem now is in terms of obesity and compared in terms of nutrition. So what are some of the lessons that we can highlight from Latin America is that interrelationship between those four blocks that I have in this slide: technological adoption, organizational innovations, public-private collaboration, and institutional and policy support. They are all connected. So it's not that it's done as a bottom-up approach or something like that, but it's the connectivity between the four things. And then just to highlight some very good examples for three different countries and different also commodities. In Argentina, we can highlight the issue in terms of technology and producer-led coordination, that it is really done through a farmer-led organization. So it's a change in the organizational way of handling agricultural production, but that wasn't done by itself. So it's not only that it was promoted the no-till technology, but it was also given with technological packages and a whole change in terms of how farmers organize themselves in cooperatives and so forth. In Peru, we can highlight the very interesting story about, for example, blueberries, when there was a lot of interaction between public policy, private and public policy and interventions. And then in Brazil, we can highlight dairy, which it was done in a change also in how to work with cooperatives, and then deregulation and regulation at the same time, but for different stages. And again, these are very good examples that I would really like you to go and read them because they have some very interesting things. Then also to highlight some of the interesting things that has already done between South-South cooperation between Latin America and Africa. And we can highlight maybe the example of PRESID, which is an institution in Argentina, which they was promoting the no-till technologies, and it was through a project with the African Development Bank, and it was done in many different countries like Ghana and Uganda. And it was the transfer of that way of producing with the no-till technology. Or another one is the one done with ABC and BRAPA, that it was Brazil and Nigeria through the Green Imperative. And it was in Botswana. And it was, again, how we do the technology transfer, but also training that goes with that. And then in terms of finance, because we cannot do this without the finance, is how also in Latin America it's been very important how we connect the national with the regional with the global, and that is not only in terms of how it is think about the problems, but also how it is done. So for example, we have INTA and EMBRAPA, which they were key in terms of the national policy and investment on R&D that it was necessary. It was supported by the CGIAR, IFPRI, CIMIT, and so forth. But we also have those regional platforms that really allow us to do this work through, for example, IICA or Fontagro. And then you have all the development banks that will support that as well. And so again, sorry that I rushed a little bit, but again, it was just to motivate you to read it. But what I wanted to concentrate is, so what do we do with this? What it is important for us to keep in mind? So Latin Americans' experience shows that really the agri-food transformation is not driven by technology alone, and that was also highlighted in the previous panel. Productivity gains occur when technology is embedded in strong institutions, effective markets, and inclusive forms of organization. For Africa, this implies that the key lesson is not to replicate Latin America's path, but to adapt the principle that allowed innovation to scale to deliver the results. Our first priority is building the enabling environments for adoption in Latin America to secure land tenure, rural infrastructure, and functional extension systems created the conditions for farmers to invest and take the risks. These foundations made it possible for technologies to spread and generate productivity gains. In Africa, accelerated innovation requires similar long-term investment and policy continuity rather than isolated technical interventions. Strong public institutions were also central. Agricultural research organizations such as EMBRAPA and INTA in Argentina succeeded because they were well-funded, mission-oriented, and closely connected to producers and the private sector. Their role went beyond generating technologies to adapting them to local conditions. So strengthening national research and extension systems in Africa is therefore essential for locally relevant and scalable innovations. Organizational innovation is equally important. Cooperatives, producer networks, and service providers in Latin America enable smallholders to access inputs, finance, knowledge, and markets. These arrangements reduce transaction costs and allow farmers to participate in modern value chains. For Africa, investing in farmer organizations and collective action is critical to ensure that innovation reaches small-scale producers. Public policy also helps crowd in private investment. In countries like Peru, targeted public investment reduces risk and aligns incentives for agribusiness development, particularly in high-value and irrigated agriculture. The lesson for Africa is not permanent subsidies, but strategic public actions to de-risk investment, infrastructure, processing, and market access. Emerging digital technologies offer new opportunities, but sequencing matters. Precision agriculture, digital finance, and traceability tools are most effective when supported by connectivity skills and appropriate regulation. For Africa, the focus should be on inclusive digital ecosystems and address real constraints, especially for youth and women. South-South cooperation can reinforce these efforts when it is demand-driven and adapted to local context. Successful Latin America-Africa partnership emphasize this joint problem-solving, long-term institutional collaboration, and capacity building, rather than one-way technology transfer. And finally, financing remains a binding constraint in Latin Americans' experience with blended finance, public R&D, funding, and regional mechanisms show how risk can be shared and long-term innovation supported. Adapting these approaches can help Africa mobilize the capital needed for climate smart and inclusive agriculture, agri-food systems. But looking ahead, there is a significant opportunity to really deepen the integration between Africa and Latin America. The two regions are largely complementary, as seen in some of the figures in the agri-food system, but yet trade flows remain very limited. So strengthening these trade links can support food security and diversification and value chain development for the two regions itself. So again, there's a lot to be done. In Latin America, we're still also struggling with some of the things that also are covered in the chapter. So there's no one solution, but it is how we connect all these things. Thank you very much. Back to you.
Thank you, Valerie, and thank you for presenting your chapter here, and also mentioning that yes, we do have some lessons to learn, but with context. We have to understand also the contextual difference, and we have to also consider some of the institutional relevance that might be important for Latin America, may not be important for Africa, but at the same time, we have some lessons that we can learn from their success and few countries mentioned in the chapter. Thank you very much, and thank you all the presenters. It was wonderful, and but we'll have participant will have a question and answer at the end of this session. But before we invite for questions from participant, we have two discussants, a wonderful discussant, high-level discussant from two institutions, one from ECP and the other one from Science Foundation for Africa. And so I will start with Dr. Abdou Tukwando, who is Executive Director of International Center for Insect and Physiology, which is and Ecology, ECP. So, Doctor, I have a few questions for you to share us your experience and insights. Yeah, you can also comment on the presentation and the chapters that have been presented. But more specifically, we know ECP is one of the leading institutions for insect and physiology and ecology, and also that has a very strong correlation with food security in Africa. And you have been expanding a lot of innovations, and one of them is the insect farming. Insect farming has been one of the key technology that has been promoted by ECP for food security, even for water management, by economy, and all those things. So based on the experience you have, and what and how we can really promote this type of technologies for Africa to ensure that we are now coming to the new phase of CAADP. So how can we really benefit from this type of technologies and these things? So we want to hear from your experience and also your insights. Over to you, Doctor.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be part of this very important event. I would like to extend my congratulations to Academia 2063 for initiating this ATOR and being in the 17th edition. It shows that it is a very robust approach, not just content-wise. I'm really impressed by the content, but also the way you make that content available through the annual ReSAKSS conference. It is in itself an innovation that needs to be nurtured. Having said that, I would like to thank all those who have preceded me, particularly the presenters and the dignitaries, for setting the scene. And going straight to the assignment you've given me, I would like to start by a question that you don't have to answer. Can you imagine a world without insects? They have been here before us, 400 million million years in existence. We tend to think of them mostly as bad insects, those who are pests and vectors of diseases. But there are also many good insects. For example, the pollinators. Can you imagine what would be agriculture without pollination? It wouldn't exist for most crops. And We do have those that are also involved in producing our food and feed, and I'll come back to that. In terms of food production, we have apiculture, for example. Everybody knows about that work that is providing a lot of jobs to young people. But there is also sericulture, which is another area where we are now active. So, straight to your question, I think if I had to summarize, how can insect farming be integrated into national strategies on feed security, waste management, and bioeconomy? Maybe the phrase that would come is the power of evidence. To get it adopted by the policymakers, you must give strong evidence, and evidence based on context. We've heard from the previous presenters that context matters. You can't just transfer things from one place to another. So, what is the justification for the work on insects? We have a situation of rising costs of fertilizer and animal feed, which are constraining crop and livestock production in Africa. The sub-Saharan African region generates about 81 million tons of solid waste, of which 57% is organic waste, and that is every year. Tackling these challenges requires an innovative technology such as insect farming. We reduce land and water requirement, as well as reduce greenhouse gas emission. These insects thrive on organic waste to produce protein-rich biomass for animal feed and organic fertilizer, which we call ReSAKSS fertilizer, for enhanced crop production. Thus, harnessing the potential of insect farming in the food systems will contribute to food and nutrition security while improving environmental health by recycling waste, mitigating pressure on finite natural resources, reducing greenhouse gas emission, creating new business opportunities, and I insist on that aspect, and jobs, reducing demand for foreign currency to import feed and fertilizer, and promote a green economy. I will have the opportunity, if time permits, to get back to that. But for now, let's say that our work has shown the benefits of insect meal on animal nutrition and health. There are many publications in that area, and I'm not going to go through all of them, but I can share a note on that we prepared not long ago. For example, incorporation of black soldier fly larvae in poultry feeds increases the wealth and beneficial bacteria in the gut of the chicken, and that leads to chicken that are healthier, producing more of what we want from chicken, whether it is the meat or the eggs. We have also shown that it can be used for aquaculture, and it increases by 23% the production of fish. That is, these are facts that we have documented. And from the fertilizer side, we have seen that the ReSAKSS fertilizer have not just increasing the nutrient quality of the soil, but also the life in the soil. Soil is not just a chemical substrate. There is also life in the soil, and the insect fertilizer are very critical to improving that life under the soil, which we depend so much on. So these are some of the initial comments I would like to offer in support of my claim that insect farming holds a bright future in the continent. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. I think these are, we have these very interesting results and innovations that I think by now many people are convinced about the importance of insect farming. And but I mean, one thing I just want to follow up. One thing, yes, we have the evidence, the research evidence from ECP and also other policy research institutions, including Academia 2063 and all these things. And these are very, very interesting results. And it's also my belief that they bring really significant impact on African agri-food systems. But how to, make this evidence really applicable by policymakers? How to really convince the policymakers? What are the platforms? Can you comment how we can convince them?
Sure. Maybe I can comment on our own experience in that field,
please, yeah,
rather than being general. We convened not long ago a meeting, I think it was on the sideline of the African Food System Summit, on youth and insects. And it will strike you that there is so many similarities between youth and insects. For example, the abundance and diversity, energy and resilience, transformative power, and the above agents of renewal. Insects are one of the most abundant resources on Earth. They are nature's open and sung workers. They pollinate, recycle, protect our crops, feed our livestock, and even provide food, silk, honey, medicines, and other high-value products. On the other hand, Africa's youth represent the largest and most diverse demographic force on the continent, comprising over 75% of the population, sometimes higher in certain places. They are the continent's boldest dreamers, creators, and builders. So you now see that if you bring those two together, how you can use them to be the scaler of the innovation that come from our research. And that's exactly what we do. We consider youth as innovators, but also influencers with a very sound business orientation. They are very apt at using AI and all the related technology. So as we use them by bringing them to adopting the technologies through some training, they become the natural propagator of this technology. And because they have their ways of getting their voice across to policymakers, they get the policymakers to follow them. So we do not directly try to influence the policymaker for the adoption part. We work with the policymakers on the regulatory aspects, which I can come to later on. Okay. Now, the other group that we work with are the private sector, as I said. Today, I am proud to say that with the youth that we've trained and who have become business entrepreneurs in Kenya and other countries around Africa, we are starting a program of support to countries in the Pacific Islands, where the expertise that is in Kenya is going to help the countries in the Pacific Island to also adopt that insect farming, particularly in the tourist industry. We're starting the same thing in Latin America and the Caribbean at the request from the ambassadors that are in Kenya from this region. So it's not just us receiving from elsewhere, we are also able to export our technologies and our knowledge to other parts of the continent right here from ICIPE. Last thing that I want to mention for the private sector taking the innovation, we are supplying some solution to some of the constraints of agriculture in Europe. I will not mention any country at the moment because this is still being discussed, because we are dealing with live organisms and there are some things to put in place before that. So yes, the evidence is there, and those who will carry that evidence to turn that into business and influence the policymakers are the youth and the private sector. And I hope I've answered your question with that.
Yes, definitely. I think this is a nice insight. I mean, we may not directly approach the policymakers. We can influence them through the civil societies, through the private sector, through the youth, and even through the public. I mean, by creating some awareness and all these things, that is how we can influence. I think this is one way of approaching influencing the policy making and providing our evidence for use and all those things. So thank you for your insight. It's very helpful. Let me come to Dr. Evelyn Gitao, and nice to meet you. And Dr. Gitao is Chief Scientific Officer from the Science for African Foundation, SFA. My question for you, Doctor, is I think as a foundation, you have been strengthening and supporting the science and innovation in Africa. So my question for you is, what are the opportunities that exist for African research institutions and to innovate and develop tailor-made technologies to address challenges in the agri-food system transformation? So what are the opportunities that we have in Africa for innovators and promoters of agricultural technologies and innovations? Please share us your experience because you have been in this sector for a while. Thank you. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, Chair. And let me begin again, like everyone else, congratulating the Academia 2063 on the ATO report. It's really an important reference point for organizations like ourselves to really focus on moving technology frontiers, both in timely and necessary ways. And I also want to thank the organizers because listening to the comparative perspectives that have been brought out by China, Europe, and Latin America have really strengthened how we as Africa ought to think. And Dr. Abdu has really talked about a little bit how ISIPE is already implementing this. So for me, really, I'll start in the perspective of that through the three experiences we've heard, as well as the response from ISIPE, is that innovation only delivers when it is organized beyond individual projects or institutions. And this has been, from the plenary all day, we've been hearing this. So for African research institutions, I think our biggest opportunity is therefore to work through consortia models like we fund that can carry technologies to scale rather than operating in isolation. Constantly being stuck in this pilotitis kind of framework is really something we need to think about. The China experience has shown us that there are no shortcuts. Technology adoption is driven by coordinated action along the whole value chain, from what is being collected as data and knowledge, different varieties, extension, rural infrastructure. All these things really ought to inform how we as a foundation would fund consortium models that link research institutions with capacity building, with training, with value addition, with production and manufacturing, and including the South-to-South collaboration. So as a foundation, having worked now at 89 institutions across the continent in over 35 countries, we found that when we work with multidisciplinary consortia that are working across different countries, there's a lot of shared learning and a lot of perspective that needs to happen to really drive local ownership. When you think about the European and the Latin America experience, there are a couple of things that they brought out, which highlights institutional strengthening and why it's so important to enable that. And this is also linked to something we've been thinking about as a strategy for us at the foundation around data. Productivity gains can only come if we connect the technology, the adoption, and the data that is generated, both in public sector and private sector. And this is important. The question you asked around policy is really how to then ensure that the policy actors get and are enabled to access this data and are part of the data economy in this area. So as a foundation, we're trying to position backing consortia and platforms rather than isolated projects, linking research institutions, importantly, science granting councils. So at national level, working with national research funds to enable them to actually become more systems thinking around how we produce data and share data and curate data. And then finally, working with regional bodies so that technology readiness is matched with system readiness. So regulatory frameworks that support AI and digital technologies that would enable better efficiencies as well as better data sharing across different disciplines is really, really important for us. Over.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing these insights. But I have a follow-up question for you as well. And if you had to name one concrete action in your sector, which is the science foundation, should it take in the next 2-3 years? I mean, we have to implement this in the next 2-3 years, a very short period of time. But anyway, yeah. I mean, we want to move this technology frontier up in Africa because there is no luxury, there is no time for us to waste. And we are importing a lot of food, and we have a lot of these productivity issues. It has been mentioned several times and all those things. Then, what action should it be?
Yeah.
Based
So
on your take, yeah.
yeah, we've already been shown that we actually have enough technology. So it's not more and more technologies. I think for me, it's for us, the short term is really to fund and work with different regional consortia that do four things well. The first one is governance, because we found that governance in institutions is actually the driver of scaling, the driver of better digital and AI technology use, and even the better use and curation and sharing of data. So that's the first one. The second one is linking research directly to policy and implementation. So we hold evidence workshops with policy actors, really not for us to share information, but for us to co-create around their priorities, and also bring already what has been co-created for them to actually frame into what they think is a priority going forward. We also think it's really important in these regional type consortia to include intermediaries such as cooperatives, the producer organizations, women-led organizations, youth-led organizations, and especially linking that to global financing and enhancing financing models that are not the usual suspects. Now, the last thing I want to talk about here is some work we're trying to do where we worked with the African Research Standard, ARSO, to launch the good research management practice as a tool that will, number one, enhance how science granting councils develop institutions, make them stronger, and enable them to actually do better the research that they do. So we want to strengthen science granting councils into the national research funds in Kenya and other countries. We want to then strengthen institutions, not as administrative work, but really to be part of the core technology that allows for scaling to happen within institutions, so that it creates coordination, and then for innovation, predictability in a market, and learning and continued shared learning. So as SFA, we would act as a system enabler, investing in capacity strengthening in people, investing in institutional capacity. So for us, institutions have to go with the fellowships that we provide in terms of PhDs, and we have to integrate data systems. And for us, working with partners to reduce the fragmentation that has already been highlighted in terms of fragmentation would be through data, through AI, and piloting these types of platforms from technology adoption to technology leadership in line with the CADEP 2026-2035. Just to close, really, Africa, we do not need more pilots. We need strong consortia that can carry technologies from promise to impact to scale. Over.
Thank you. Thank you, scale. I think that is the takeaway message. We need governance that can scale the available technologies and innovations. I think this exactly coincides with what John was talking about, agri-food system transformation. And one of the main area of focus is governance and how to improve our governance that can bring our technologies, innovation, institution to work and to scale for impact, for impact. And thank you for that comment. And also, we are happy to focus on this governance probably for the next edition of ATRO. And who knows? Yeah, thank you, the panelists. And I think for the interest of time, I will decide just to pause here and then invite participants if they have questions. But before that, if Dr. Abdu, if you have anything you want to say or add, I can give you the chance. If not, we invite for participants to ask questions.
Thank you so much for offering me that opportunity. I did mention that we do work with policy makers, but from the regulatory side, my colleague panelist has mentioned ARSO. And we've been working with ARSO, and we have developed a continental position paper on edible insect farming and derived products in Africa, mostly for the education of policymakers. And we have developed a policy document on the framework to promote investment and trade in edible insect farming and derived products in Africa. I believe these are publicly available documents that participants might want to lay hands on and use. Thank you so much for having me part of this discussion, and I would like to also celebrate the partnership between Academia 2063 and ECP. Thank you.
Thank you, Abdul. We also really appreciate your presence and your contribution. And one of the editor for this editor is from ECP, and we have also chapters on insect farming that we will discuss for the next 2 days. So thank you for your cooperation. And I think, I don't know, the organizers, like Dr. Butaki, you may help me how to invite participants for questions, if there is any. And we have the 4 presenters and the 2 discussants. They are happy to respond for some burning issues, if there are any. And I check on the Q&A, and I see a question about how to access the book chapter, and the book and also the chapters. I think on that, Dr. Butaki will say something about it. And also there is a question from Kasim. What framework or methodologies can the African continent use to implement these theories into actions? I think panelists or presenters, you can comment on this. And everybody wants to know that we have the technologies, we have the theories, we have the strategies and the policies, but we have to transform this into action. And then how we can achieve. Is there any, any suggestion on that? That's one question I have. Do we have another questions? I think we don't have those questions, but if you want to jump on this question or on how to translate these theories and these findings to action, anyone from the group, from the presenters and also the discussant, you can comment. Dr. Val, you can go ahead.
I think that maybe you mentioned me. So I think that it is very, very important to, it's a key question actually, how we can implement this. And I think that it connects also with another question that it was in the chat earlier today, talking about what's the evidence. So what we need to really find is what are the most effective interventions that will allow us to really adopt those technologies. Keeping in mind that we also need to make sure that they are in a sustainable way, to make sure that we have those outcomes, in terms of sustainability, which is the economic, the social, and the environmental ones as well. So just to highlight, for example, one initiative that we have in Latin America, which is called Avanzar 2030, that it is also connecting with what actually Dr. Gito just mentioned as well, which is to work with different partners in the regions to have also that impact, to make sure that with little we can get more. So we work doing synthesis evidence with more than 60 researchers at this point from different institutions. And again, we learn from different experiences doing this evidence synthesis around the world, but we bring that into context to the region and to the countries as well, in how we can get to that adoption or that implementation of policies to be more efficient. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your sharing your insights. So I think with that, I think we can conclude our session. And there might be a lot of other questions and also suggestions, but we'll continue discussing them in the coming tomorrow and after tomorrow. And with this, I thank you all the presenters for your contribution for the chapter, for this year edition, which is a very interesting edition. And thank you for contributing, taking your time and sharing your experience and frameworks and all these things. And also I want to thank the discussant, Dr. Abdu and Dr. Evelyn, for sharing your institutional experience and all these things. So with that, thank you and have a good evening and a good day. And I hand over to our facilitator, Dr. Butaki. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tadesse, to you, your discussants and presenters for that insightful roundtable where we have received insights on some key findings from the report. As you said, we are rounding up for day one. So to take the stage and share some key takeaways from the discussions we have had so far, I will now welcome our final speaker of the day to deliver, key takeaways from our discussion and also share some insights before we wrap up the session. Please welcome Dr. Augustin Wamboyamje, former Director of Knowledge Systems at Academia 2063. Welcome, Augustin. Good to see you. Over to you.
Thank you, Lai. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for having me. Can you see me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, we can hear you. Thank you.
Yes. Good evening, everyone. As we wrap up this first day of very rich dialogue, let me offer 10 very quick or succinct takeaways that capture the spirit of the discussions so far. The first one that I was able to capture is that the crisis for fixing our food system is very clear. But so is our toolbox, meaning we know what the challenge is. There are statistics about the number of Africans facing hunger in 2024, yet we are not starting from zero as a continent. We have the technology, we have the frameworks. Now we have the Kampala to move from potential to delivery. So we probably don't have any excuse for not acting. So we know the issues, we have the toolbox, we just have to get down to the business and get it fixed. The second is, we heard this repeatedly, that technology alone won't save us at all. By the way, Prof. Christian presented the conventional frontier where farmers were not even on the frontier simply because they were not accessing the existing technology. So our challenges, so therefore, are not a lack of innovation or technologies. It is institutional. Something has to be done for them to graduate to that level. Therefore, we need policies, governance, finance systems that allow technologies to reach the scale. This leads me to the third point that connects to this one. The real frontier here is institutional. I'm sure you hear at least 3 people stating this repeatedly. We need to have strong R&D, smart regulations, capable extension services, and deeper finance are the true engine of transformation. If we really want something that is going to be resilient, that is going to take us to where we should be by now, we really have to put all this together. The fourth point is that integration beats isolation. Pilots must connect to market, value chains, and farmers' realities. Success looks like bundle solutions, not one-off tools. Meaning we should be continuing with this system thinking, not dealing with issues in isolation and hoping for the miracle to happen. The fifth one is invest in productivity, not just land. The reason being that growth must come from smarter farming, not more land. By the way, closing the 40 to 60% yield gap requires serious investment in R&D and human capital. This has been said at least by 2-3 speakers. And the sixth point that I have captured is storytelling drives adoption. If we have technologies sitting on the shelves, we're not saying anything about them or not saying enough I'm sure we are seeing things, but probably we are not using the most efficient pathway to get the awareness to do the awareness raising that is required. So trust, visibility, and cultural relevance determine whether innovations are embraced. How to communicate is as important as what we communicate, by the way. 7, we must learn, or we better learn from the Global South, because we hear from Prof. Schengen and Dr. Timman about the China tech yachts, but also from Latin America experience, the cooperative model. These are blueprints for context-smart adaptation, not just copy-paste solutions. So at the same time, we do have existing resources that we are keeping on our shelves, but we are able to tap into what others have tried, what made them to succeed, and from there, develop our own pathways. Number 8, we need to bring finance ministers to the table. And this is interesting because it's not the first time. In every single conversation about agricultural transformation or agri-food system transformation, in the end, someone will always tell you, this is 100% correct in my understanding, that we can do all this conversation and agree on what exactly works and what doesn't. If finance people are not there, we are in a position we need to compelling economic cases to secure sustained public investment. If the people who keep the money are not available, as we discussed, it will be we will go back to drawing a board when it comes to pushing to get the resources to implement what we have agreed will be the way to go. Number 9 is about the quality of seed. Farmer-to-farmer exchange can thrive if supported by quality early generation seed and assured supply. I think this is a point that Dr. Enoch from Gates Foundation made, and I think he's been supported by many speakers that follow. It's important that we spend time dealing with this issue instead of hoping that someone else will come from somewhere to fix our problem. This is something sitting in our yard. We have to fix it ourselves. It's possible because we have homegrown solutions. And he gave 2 examples of experiences that are working, one in Eastern Africa and one in West Africa. And the last point, which is number 10, is that this decade is about delivery. We spent 20 years, 2 decades, convincing the world that Africa can do it. Africa can embrace evidence-based planning. Africa can embrace evidence-based monitoring, evidence-based reporting, and so on and so forth. I think to a certain extent, to a large extent, we have been successful. We were also trying to implement, to try and move the needle. But the reality is that after 2 decades, we have been struggling really to get the kind of impact that we should have created by now. And the main reason is that implementation has stalled. In many areas, it has not just slowed, it has stalled. So with the Kampala Declaration now active, our task is implementation. From commitment to outcome, from report to results. This is not to say that research will not continue. Research will happen, but we have to make sure that we keep the eye on the ball in making sure that things get done on the ground. Thank you to all the speakers, panelists, and participants. Let me turn back the mic to Dr. Butake to give us the guidance for the next step. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Augustin Wamboyamje, for framing those takeaways to highlight some of the pressure points that were raised by today's speakers. Once again, thank you to all our panelists and participants for joining. We are finishing right on time, so we have been very disciplined during this session, and that did not prevent us from really going in depth into these topics, which are critical to the next decade of Africa's agri-food system transformation. Regarding the poll, panelists are now able to vote, and a couple of panelists have already voted, so we encourage you to take a minute and respond quickly to the poll before we close the meeting. The report will be available on the publication page this evening, just after the conference. So we have your email addresses. We will be sending you a newsletter campaign, including a link to the report, in addition to the reminder for tomorrow's session, which will kick off same time at noon. You don't need to change your link, just connect using the same link. You will receive an automatic reminder from Zoom to connect tomorrow using your same link. So stay tuned for the report. And for all those who have been asking, at the end of the 3 days, we will send you a compilation of all the PowerPoint presentations that we must have viewed during the conference. So you will get that at the end of the conference. But the report link you will get after this session. So thank you again for coming. It's been a rich session. Thank you to all the senior leaders, partners, researchers, government representatives, development partners, civil society, private sector actors, ag-tech leaders who made it here today. And we look forward to welcoming you tomorrow at noon for day 2 of the ReSAKSS annual conference. Until then, take care. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Bye, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lai. Thank you.